Isn't this a sports show?
I hope those people that listen to the entire show get the full experience. Super serious Tyreek Hill stuff. First hour and a half.
Yep.
Last 10 minutes, Josh had his underwear on backwards.
Almost entirely.
I was in Las Vegas for like 20 minutes, and I did get naked in the Las Vegas airport.
You are listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Briscoe.
Not completely naked. I was sort of Winnie the Poohing.
Take the show with you by listening on the Sports Radio 810 mobile app at 810WHB.com or by searching for Almost Entirely Sports wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, this is Joshua Briscoe here for Joshua Briscoe's Twitter account at JB Briscoe. You can follow Joshua Briscoe on Twitter at JB Briscoe. This has been a commercial. Welcome back to Almost Entirely Sports. MVP-ness! Ha ha ha!
This is Almost Entirely Sports on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Let's talk about it! Woo-wee! Gotta tell you what, for somebody who generally has a grand appreciation of a couple of off days, not having to worry about the radio for a little bit, boy howdy, that was a bad time for us not to have any shows for 3 straight days, huh? We're gonna make up for it over the next 3 hours here today, though, as I am so glad to be here to talk about Orlando Brown Jr., the Chiefs' move for him, and also, since we're starting here at 6, everything's in disarray. Rudy, what happened to the remote controls? Are they over there?
They're right there. Yeah.
I thought I had them. I thought I passed them to myself, and I simply didn't.
So what time are we on tonight?
Unfortunately, I think the show has started. So how are you? You feeling ready?
I've just been waiting for you to say the time of the show so I could say nice. If I'm being perfectly honest.
Oh, look at that. It's 6:09. And we're on from 6 to 9 tonight here on Almost Entirely Sports. Yes, we're on an hour earlier. Yes, that means you can see the sunlight glistening through the doors, illuminating me like the angel that I am. I don't know what happens when you turn the camera to Rudy. I'm guessing there's going to be a glare.
A horn or two.
A horn or two?
Yeah, you're an angel, I'm the devil.
Got it. I was going to just let you continue with the angelic sort of setup and just maybe you're blowing a trumpet.
No.
You're playing a horn of
I
some
used to know how to play the trumpet.
Is that true?
I could play just about when I was a younger kid. I could play just as compared to now, as where I'm an older kid. I could play most instruments in band class. Trumpet, trombone, drums.
All right. Here's the thing. We're not getting deeper into this,
xylophone.
but I'm adding.
Not saxophone. That was hard.
Okay, I'm adding Rudy's band career on the Google Doc down with Rudy's recurring dream that we never got to last week.
I have a guitar. Wait, I have a Oh, yeah.
We'll get there. We're gonna get there at some point, maybe ahead of the draft.
I do have a guitar, but I have not played that thing in
I don't want to talk about your guitar.
I think I'm probably gonna sell it in this move.
I don't want to talk about your guitar right now. I want to talk about Orlando Brown. I feel like they basically said, hey, I'm taking your key card. Get out of here. The news was breaking on Friday, just a little bit before the first home opener for Sporting Kansas City, as Rudy and I were headed out there for the Sporting game on Friday. The news comes down, and I have been itching to talk about some of this ever since then. Plus, we got to hear from Orlando Brown Jr. today. We'll bring you some audio of that here in a minute as well.
Can I applaud you for something, actually?
Applaud me for something?
Yeah, so I obviously saw when the news went down and everything. One of the first things that went through my mind is, oh boy, because I obviously know hey, Josh now has a little bit more work to do, but we also have to be somewhere. And I thought to myself, oh boy, he's going to be late. You know what? Not only were you not late, you're a few minutes early.
I got there before you did. I made it happen. Listen, when I got places to be, I'm going to get there. Fashionably late or early, hard to tell.
Usually late.
I just
want to give you credit because,
thank you for that.
You weren't.
Thank you.
I was impressed.
Every once in a while, I just do it to switch things up, just to keep everybody guessing.
And it's a good plan.
So, Friday comes around. We finished another week on AES here talking about Tevin Jenkins and draft prospects and choices the Chiefs could be making at 31. We've talked to all our guests about all those things. I am getting really excited for Seth Kaiser's eventual tier list of all of the tackles the Chiefs could take at 31 or maybe 63. And the moves that Brett Veach had talked about earlier on Friday, which we'll be playing absolutely none of that audio here today because none of that meant a bleeping thing by the end of the day. Brett Veach,
like an hour later.
Brett Veach talking about tackles in press conferences should never be acknowledged in any way, shape, or form ever again. But Veach talks, and he mentioned a couple of things that I thought were interesting at that time. He talked about his preferred sort of pocket in the NFL draft this year being kind of the second, third-ish rounds. Later on in the draft, things get a little less deep because you've got less players in it. That's kind of interesting. He talked about not wanting to sign a veteran tackle just for the sake of signing a veteran tackle. I tweeted as that was happening that I still didn't particularly care for that because I do think there is an incredible value to having an actual, proven commodity, a comfortable thing that you can put in a position like left tackle so you're not maybe starting opening day with two rookies on each side. And by the end of the day, we found out that Brett Veach agreed with me.
I mean, they're still not going to pay a left tackle just to pay a left tackle. He's likely not going to get paid this year.
Well, we got to by the end of all of this, and yes, this is where I'm starting with all of this, is we got to the end and found out, yes, Brett Veach agreed with me. Everything comes through my lens eventually, and for me, that's where it lands. But the Chiefs make this trade for Orlando Brown, and I'm just ready to get into some of the guts of this trade. So we've talked about we've wet your whistle with future tales of Rudy's band class, which I am honestly pretty interested to hear about.
I mean, it's nothing super special.
No, it is to me.
But it was pretty.
But it's down the line.
Well versed.
It's down the line. We've got a whole week of stuff leading up to the draft. We're going to talk about the Chiefs' draft plans in a second. It's down the line. It's coming.
I tried the flute once or twice.
But I want to get into the nitty-gritty of this because I think the Chiefs did something really, really interesting. Not out of character, mind you. Very in character for Brett Veach, in fact. But something terribly interesting. So if you need the refresher, I wouldn't blame you. There's a lot of moving parts. The Chiefs get former Ravens tackle Orlando Brown Jr., and the 58th overall pick in this year's NFL draft, plus a 2022 6th-round pick, which the Chiefs essentially just moved back in that because they give up a 2022 5th-round pick. And the bulk of what they give up is the first pick of this year's draft for them, the 31st overall pick, a 3rd-round pick in this year's draft being number 94, and a 4th-round pick being number 136 in addition to that 5th-rounder in 2022. Now, while we're talking about the terms, there were a couple of different ways of evaluating what this trade ended up actually being once you do all of the math on what picks cancel out and all that stuff. There are a couple people that were tweeting that essentially this ended up being a mid-second round pick or so. I learned this as it was happening. That's based off of an old draft chart that was created by the Cowboys 30 years ago. And there's actually some newer mechanisms to evaluating it, and honestly, it probably explains all the moving parts in this year's deal, which is really, really interesting. But PFF_Moo on Twitter, he goes by Moo, says basically Brown for a late first-round pick. Lee Sharp, at Lee Sharp NFL, tweeted that the Jimmy Johnson-led Cowboys made a draft chart about 30 years ago. It was based not on what picks should be worth, but just historically how trades valued them. Multiple public charts looking at real value exist today. Also, our friend Patrick Brennan, who's on Twitter at Painting Corner, tweeted, so based on the NFL draft research I did a few months back, the Chiefs acquired .36 WAR in this trade and gave up .91. That difference equals .55 wins above replacement, exactly equivalent to the 21st overall pick. So there's your whole sort of layout there. If you don't want to do all the math on a first this way and a second this way and a bunch of picks this way and then a swap here and there, you could say something as high as the 21st overall pick in total value, as if the Chiefs would have had to have traded up from 31 to 21 and then traded 31 to the Ravens. Or you can say maybe it's a late first, early second, somewhere in that range. I'll tell you this, my evaluation of the trade really doesn't change much based on any of those ways of reading into it, because I'm looking at all these picks individually. I would have rather them just not had to have downsized in terms of numbers of picks, but that's just your array of outcomes there. You can pick from all of those. But there are several aspects of this trade that I find super duper interesting that's going to inform so many things that come for this team in really, perhaps the next half decade, and certainly in the next couple of years. If you listen to this show regularly, you know that I am genuinely interested in the contract stuff and the salary cap stuff, and in some spots, the sort of analytics meeting those things. I just think it's an interesting way to get a grasp on some of the more quantifiable elements of GMing. I played Madden 08 on my PC for years and just kept downloading roster updates so I could go through, play as a GM, move contracts around, do all of that stuff, and then simulate the games. Because I wasn't trying to play in the NFL, I was trying to manage an NFL through Madden 08.
We played sport video games very similarly.
And I think that probably explains some things.
I think also a lot of people kind of in the younger generation. I think that's kind of like, I think a lot of us, that's how we did it.
Well, and I also don't want to say that playing Madden that way makes you good at those things.
No.
But
it's just it was the way of looking at it.
It proves an interest in them. And that's always how I enjoyed that side of the game. I'm thinking Madden 08. I was probably doing that at age, 13, and till now, I'm still doing it, essentially. So I'll get to some of that in a second. But as would be not terribly difficult for you to probably guess, some of the draft pick moving things, I have just a hitch of hesitance. It's like Markelle Fultz's shot, before it got fixed, I guess. The ball goes up eventually, and it goes in often enough, but I got a little hitch that doesn't look quite right, because losing draft picks makes the draft picks you do have even more valuable and even more vital that you hit on them. We'll get on that in a second. The contract numbers, of course, are going to give me a little bit of the heebie-jeebies, because that's a thing that I care about more than the average person listening now probably does, because I think it's interesting. I'm going to get to those things in a second. But first, I do want you to think about the times that we've seen Patrick Mahomes, not even the Super Bowl, running for his life, but the times when we've seen Patrick Mahomes start drifting too far back in the pocket because he doesn't fully trust the interior in front of him. Or the times that he ends up on the move, on the run somewhere where he's going to make a play happen because he's incredible at the sport of football, but his life could have been made a lot easier, and maybe he could have had a cleaner path to an incredible play if he would have been able to put his feet where they were. Think about some of the successes. Hey, do we have time to run wasp? That was the question. The question wasn't, do you want to run wasp? It was, whenever I drop back to pass, am I going to have enough time to let this route develop downfield and to hit this pass? They did. They won a Super Bowl. Woo! Against a team who is now trading up for Mac Jones. So things went differently for those two teams. Against a coach who we'll hear from later on in today's show.
I vibe with Kyle Shanahan.
The Chiefs now on the left side of their offensive line have Orlando Brown Jr. and Joe Thuney. Now, it's the highest paid guard in football and a guy who will have a chance to contend with highest paid tackles in football, depending on how this deal goes. It's going to be very expensive. But that's hilarious to me and really exciting for what the Chiefs' offensive line could look like. You're going to have the winner of LDT versus Kyle Long, the winner of Mike Remmers versus Lucas Niang. Austin Blythe is going to have to just hang out in the middle there. I think he'll be fine. I think the Chiefs also, there's a pretty good chance they draft somebody they like at center later on in this year's draft. Those two guys can compete. Winner can start. Again, I think it's worth noting, this is probably, again, me being a little bit of a pessimist on one particular thing here. The Chiefs' issue last year was not their starting offensive line. The Chiefs' issue last year was their third-string offensive line. The offensive line in the Super Bowl was the problem. It wasn't having Eric Fisher and Mitch Schwartz were not the problem any more than Kelechi Osemele was the problem, right? They just weren't available by the time they got to the Super Bowl. Schwartz and Osemele obviously got hurt much earlier in the year than Fisher did, but I digress. And so with that being said, I still have my hesitancies about, are they deeper across the line than they were last year? I think so. And they are certainly more talented at the top. Also, if Orlando Brown and Joe Thuney continue to play every football game they're anywhere near, things are going to go very well for the Chiefs and go very well for both of them. We talked about Trent Williams as if we've talked about him in he and Tevin Jenkins both are on that Patrick Peterson fictional Chiefs team of guys we talked about a ton but never ended up actually playing for the football team. Trent Williams and Joe Thuney would have legitimately been the most expensive left side of an offensive line in the history of football. It would have been the highest paid left tackle and the highest paid left guard. It would have been extremely expensive, and we all would have been really excited about it because of what that would have meant for Patrick Mahomes. Orlando Brown Jr. is 8 years younger than Trent Williams. Orlando Brown Jr. is a couple years older than Tevin Jenkins. I think he's 2 years older. There's somebody in the draft class, I think it's Brady Christensen. He's the BYU guy, yeah? Mm-hmm. I think he is a little older than Orlando Brown Jr. is. Orlando Brown is coming in as a guy who's about to get expensive. You get 1 year of rookie contract, and then maybe 1 year under the franchise tag. As that's happening, you got to be working out his deal for the long term. Reports are he's not coming to Kansas City with a long-term deal in his pocket like the Chiefs did with Frank Clark. He's going to play out his rookie year here, and then they'll figure it out. He's going to get expensive, but he's going to be expensive going into his prime. I was excited about Trent Williams, but I had a little bit of hesitation around the idea that they were going to pay Trent Williams a ton of money at the very, very end of his prime. How long does that prime last still? Hard to say. How does he age? Probably pretty well. He's an exceptional athlete. But we're talking about Trent Williams at the end of his prime. We're talking about Orlando Brown cresting into it right now. Like, still, his arrow is very much still angled upwards. That however long he's plateauing. We might be talking about a decade of a career still to come for Orlando Brown. So he'll be expensive, but we're also going to get a year, theoretically, of watching him play at left tackle for the Chiefs this year, and they'll be able to do some of that math as they go. It's going to be so much fun to see Patrick Mahomes play quarterback with at least, knock on wood, whatever, this is the expectation of the Chiefs at this point, with an elite left side of his offensive line. Elite. That's what they're paying for. And I think Blythe or whoever they draft will be fine at center. And then you expect really excellent play from your right guard and right tackle, whoever wins those jobs. Patrick Mahomes should be able to live his life relatively unbothered for grand stretches of this season. And I don't feel bad about putting the expectations too high because that's what the Chiefs are paying for. They know that's the expectation for these guys because that's what they were willing to give up to bring them in. For Thuney, it was a lot of money right away. For Brown, it's a lot of draft capital, and it's going to be a lot of money very, very soon. The trade-off for him there, and let's say Jenkins was available at 31, which maybe he's not, right? Honestly, maybe they needed to move up to 21 to get him, and it would have been a trade package that looked a lot like this. If you move up for Tevin Jenkins, and you take him at 21, where Patrick Brennan put the price tag with his math for what the Chiefs gave up for Brown, you do have him for 4 years and a fifth-year option on a rookie contract, and that is incredibly valuable. but you're also betting on him actually living up to an NFL standard. With Orlando Brown, he's 3 years into his NFL career with 2 Pro Bowls, 1 from each tackle position. That's about all you could ask for in terms of not quite certainty, but a very, very strong bet. And you're betting a lot on it, but I think that makes sense to me. Now, I would probably like this better if the roster was built differently in a couple of spaces. I would like for Frank Clark's contract not to be the immovable object that it is. There's also some positive things here. There's some pressures and there's some positives. Let me give you the pressures first here now on the Chiefs building around him. Brett Veach's draft picks, whatever they actually select with this week, they're becoming even more vital. They need useful players on rookie contracts to fill out the roster at this point. You got 2 second-round picks, and that's great. You're going to need a starter and a role player out of those 2. And you're probably going to need another starter and another role player out of all the picks you find after that. Here's an example of how that can work. You think you found yourself a starter on day 3? Lucas Niang is going to have a chance to balance the books for the Chiefs in the Orlando Brown Jr. years to come. If they draft well and they spend wisely elsewhere and Orlando Brown plays like a top 5 tackle, this move is going to be outstanding for the Chiefs, outstanding for Mahomes, outstanding for the offense. But those are a lot of pretty big ifs. If they don't have all of those boxes get ticked, it's going to add new problems they're going to have to solve, that they're going to have to work around down the road. Again, in all of those ways, it's relatively similar to the Frank Clark deal. They don't have a bunch of great edge talent around Frank Clark. Clark underperformed at least last year by even the biggest optimists. His contract is very expensive. They spent quite a bit of cap space on Alex Okafor. He dealt with injuries the whole time. They did not hit their draft pick with Breeland Speak. So right now we're talking about the Chiefs' edge position as being relatively weak right now with a huge question mark and an expensive question mark in Frank Clark. And I think we all expect him to take an edge somewhere pretty early on in this year's draft. That particular use of all of that for Frank Clark didn't work out terribly well. Around Orlando Brown, though, they do have some pieces already put into place. So I want to talk about the contract for a second. So the Chiefs are planning to let Brown play out this last year of his rookie deal, and there's no Frank Clark pre-ready contract extension. Here's some interesting, just sort of fun with numbers, though, on the Chiefs' offensive line. Last year, Eric Fisher was a $15 million cap hit, and Mitchell Schwartz was just under $11 million. They evened out to almost exactly $26 million for Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz, the Chiefs' 2 starting tackles. Orlando Brown is really going to have a chance to end up being a $20-ish million average annual value guy. Now, depending on where his leverage is at and where the Chiefs are with the franchise tag and all of that, he's not going to be on the full open market next offseason. So maybe it's 18, maybe it's 22 if he's an all-pro this year. But he's going to be around that 20-ish range. But Lucas Niang's deal, through 2024, his cap hits are going to be right around $1 million a year. So if you're talking about total spent on your tackle positions, all of a sudden Orlando Brown and Lucas Niang, we're being optimistic about Niang, right? Even Brown, Niang, and Mike Rimmers, you're actually saving a little bit of cap space than you were with your Fisher and Schwartz duo. Now, Niang is no sure thing. Brown's no sure thing to live up to that, honestly. Mm-hmm. But do you know what that does more than anything for me? Hearing that out loud, I'm going, oh, this is great. You know what? They're not actually going to change their positional spending if Niang works out. It's actually going to be a very similar total value for the tackles. But what that does is that fact highlights the importance of having and making good draft picks. You can balance your books from almost any direction if you're hitting on your draft picks and you get good to great players at rookie contract prices. That's the construct here that can even everything out. The Chiefs could afford to overpay some corner if they wanted to, because the other starter is L'Jarius Sneed. Or this year, maybe they'll go into the season. Maybe Breeland's back, maybe he's not. But if it's Charvarius Ward on a restricted free agent tender, and L'Jarius Sneed on a rookie contract, and Rashad Fenton on a rookie contract, and maybe it's DeAndre Baker on the pennies that he's making whenever his leg heals up. If you're talking about those guys playing corner, you've got great talent at great prices that may be the result of, or is the thing that allows you to pay all that money to Frank Clark. You find these places to balance out your books, but they typically come from finding the diamonds in the rough in your later draft picks and hitting on the higher draft picks to play a role so you don't have to pay an Alex Okafor to come in and fill that spot. If Breeland Speaks would have worked out, that second edge spot would be a rookie contract still. They wouldn't have had to have given a bunch of money to Alex Okafor, and Speaks could have played there. Or Passanio could have held that spot and played there a little more successfully. Taco Charlton is on a couple of cheap deals in a row now. That will work. But for me, in terms of draft strategy, which we'll talk about the Chiefs' draft plans after trading for Orlando Brown soon here. That might be more of a conversation we have tomorrow. We'll see how tonight pans out. But if you have these picks, I think it may have been when we talked to Matt Connor on Thursday, I think it was, Wednesday or Thursday. He talked about how, the Chiefs don't need a whole bunch of guys, right? And they don't need a bunch of starters. But I would like it if they had a lot of picks because some of those guys will fizzle out quickly. Even the guys that end up on special teams are now playing special teams for you on rookie contracts. And the more shots you take, the better chance you have of hitting a real bullseye that ends up being your L'Jarius Sneed or hopefully your Lucas Niang. And it can offset the misses that come with a Breeland Speaks or all of the other issues. Everybody behind, we talk about Speaks from that draft class all the time, but the issues of these draft classes has also been the continuing issues behind those top picks because again, then you're paying premiums to fill in depth holes, where in reality, like, I would rather have Nick Allegretti at a 6th-round rookie contract than have to pay, let's say LDT, which is funny because he was also a 6th-round pick, but let's say LDT after this year, right? If maybe you think you can pay, all right, we'll pay Kyle Long or LDT, but we've got Nick Allegretti, who can be a depth guard piece. Well, now you've saved yourself a few $1 million with the difference between those guys if you end up doing that kind of math. Anyway, all of that ends up circling around Orlando Brown here because I think this trade makes them immediately better. There's no reason not to be an optimist about where Brown goes from here in terms of his development. I'm going to play you some clips from his audio here next segment, and I think you're going to really enjoy hearing from Orlando Brown today. And the Chiefs also will have to work especially carefully to not end up finding themselves being limited by the move they made to get Orlando Brown. He fills the team's biggest hole. He takes a massive, massive need and makes it a surplus for this team. That's really exciting. You should be excited about the fact that we went from spending months trying to talk ourselves into, well, I guess Liam Eichenberg could be your day one left tackle, but I don't think his ceiling is very high. Now the Chiefs took something around that pick, around 31. Maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower, maybe it's exactly 31, whatever. They essentially spent their first-round pick to get a guy that can do that because you've seen him do it. Now, we'll talk to Seth Kaiser tomorrow. His film review on Brown is up today. And he goes into some of the ways that what he did in Baltimore is different than what the Chiefs have asked a guy like Eric Fisher to do. There's going to be a little bit of a translation for Orlando Brown. Will the Chiefs ask him to play differently to fit his biggest strengths, or will he play differently to fit what the Chiefs do most naturally? Questions that they'll have to answer. But regardless, I'm very excited to find a young, entering his prime blue chip left tackle to protect Patrick Mahomes. I think that's great. This move will not be the move that makes or breaks how Brett Veach's team building strategy works. It's going to be all the moves around it. This is a brick, right? This move is a brick. How are you mortaring in all of those gaps? And that's going to be the question that Veach has to be able to answer. It's even more important that he makes every single ounce of that motor work because you've got less cap space to work with down the road. You have fewer draft picks to find and fill those holes. And to build up that depth, you don't have as many holes popping up in years down the road. The draft, this year's draft is now, I think, at the very least still is exactly as important as it was before this trade came through on Friday, because they need to set themselves up for the immediate and for the future still. But by getting Orlando Brown, they've taken the thing that posed a genuine threat to their offense being the machine that it's been over the last couple of years, and they have replaced it. They've replaced that void with a truly excellent football player who should still be getting better. That's exciting. Let's take a break. There are a few more things around this that I think we could do a better job of talking about that I think will point people in good directions, and I want you to have a chance to hear from Orlando Brown. His introductory press conference earlier today was really fun, really interesting, and I think that'll be worth your time. I think you'll be glad to hear those clips if you haven't already. We'll also talk to Matt Verderame of Fansided in 20 minutes and Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest in an hour and 20 minutes. So that's a 6 to 9 show for us tonight. Rudy had something to say about that earlier. I don't remember what it was. Didn't make any sense to me. But we got 3 hours nonetheless.
Very nice.
It's just nice to be on when the sun's
It's
up.
a very nice show.
It's a nice show. Sun's up. Back-to-back Matts. Let's tweet out that we're bringing out the big guns, perhaps the Matling guns. We got 2 Matts. It's like Gatling. You guys get it? Guys, you get it? You get the joke? Is this thing on?
Want more Almost Entirely Sports? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 Facebook page. This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Briscoe.
We're here for a one-on-one interview with our friend Travis Kelsey. Travis, I know you listen to a lot of Almost Entirely Sports. What do you think about Joshua Briscoe and Beards McFly?
I mean, I don't think they suck. I can tell you that.
Thank you, Travis.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Talking about Orlando Brown Jr., the Chiefs' new left tackle. You'll hear something from him about playing left tackle in just a minute. He had one of the most interesting and just genuinely good to listen to opening press conferences of anybody that's come to Kansas City anytime recently that I can think of, at least. I enjoyed a huge number of his answers and just the way he went about everything today. So I think you'll enjoy them as well. Some of it will be kind of eye-opening. I think some of it's just a good way of kind of filling in the player that we're all going to be rooting for on the left side of this Chiefs offensive line, hopefully for many successful years to come.
You know, his dad actually has an adverse, or not a direct line connection to the Chiefs, but a little bit of one.
I don't think I did.
So obviously you remember the Chiefs-Titans game where Jeff Triplett had his most famous deal. So Jeff Triplett is the referee who almost blinded Orlando Brown Jr.'s dad.
Right, Orlando Brown
Senior.
Period. Yeah, I don't think he ever
might just
went
be
by
Orlando
senior
Brown.
anywhere.
Yeah, I think he's just Orlando Brown.
But yeah, so we're going to hear more about Orlando Brown's dad, Orlando Brown Jr.'s dad, Orlando Brown, in a little bit, because in a very strange, interesting, roundabout way, Orlando Brown Jr. would probably not be in Kansas City right now if it were not for something that he had promised his dad, and it also set off everything in terms of him leaving Baltimore. We'll get to that in just a second. A couple things real quick on kind of the big picture sort of discussion around all of this stuff that I think is pretty interesting. One thing, when I talk about all these draft picks, right, if the Chiefs have more draft picks, they have more chances to find themselves some value that balances the books. You have more money, you have more chances to, on the back end, fill in some holes that maybe you didn't expect to be there. It's okay, you can patch it up with money. You could patch up your left tackle spot with money. The Chiefs did not have a defensive leader in the secondary post Eric Berry, so they went and signed Tyrann Mathieu. You need the money to make everything work together over the course of your NFL cap. And draft picks are the best way to acquire players without spending large amounts of money that have a higher ceiling than their salary would suggest. One thing, though, that I feel like we could, just something I'm going to try to keep in mind going forward, is the phrase margin for error. I think the phrase margin for error could kind of sand down some of the sharper edges of Chiefs Twitter and sports talk radio and all of that, where it's not quite so extreme, but I think we can talk about it in a very reasonable way. Fewer draft picks and more big contracts means that Brett Veach and all of his crew have less margin for error in the years to come. It doesn't mean this trade is a big, stupid trade for big, dumb doo-doo heads, which is what I feel like end up feeling like I'm saying about every move ever, because Twitter is a toxic place that turns all opinions into very extreme ones.
No, never.
And it also doesn't mean that this is a trade that only a god would think of making and that they're flawless from this point forward, which is also where Twitter ends up taking these things sometimes.
Never.
Here's my example, okay? Could Frank Clark's draft picks and salary cap space have given the Chiefs another first-round talent on a rookie deal and maybe money to spend on more quality depth in 2020?
Of course it would have. Why didn't they just do that?
It probably would have done that. Would they have won the Super Bowl 2 years ago without Frank Clark? Maybe. Hard to say. Will Orlando Brown make an enormous impact at left tackle this year?
Well, he is enormous.
Probably.
He is very large.
He's a very large man.
It will be an impact.
Would the 31st overall pick and all of the salary they'll end up paying him in years to come, could that have been used on Tevin Jenkins, who could be a Hall of Famer? Maybe.
Why didn't they just use that instead?
Maybe. We don't know. But what we do know, though, is the Chiefs still have a certain amount of things that they need to get from their draft picks every year that sets them up both in that year and in future years. And that's harder to do with fewer picks. Mm-hmm. You know the best way to have 5 impact players in your draft class? To have 20 picks. That would be the best way to go about it.
Or just 5 if you're good.
No, that's the exact opposite of the thing that I'm saying. But if you need 5 impact players, but you only have 5 picks, your margin for error is severely narrowed.
You gotta be real good.
So, again, that's me saying the margin for error on the Chiefs has shrunk is neither an endorsement nor a striking down of this trade. I'll tell you personally, I'm excited about it. I think it's fun as hell, and it directly impacts keeping Patrick Mahomes upright. I think that's going to be great. It also narrows their margin for error. I want you to hear, though, what we were talking about just a second ago about Orlando Brown, his dad, ending up in Kansas City. Why did he want out of Baltimore in the first place? Something we talked about, I remember talking about a couple of months ago, maybe even pre-free agency. Somebody had asked about Orlando Brown, and honestly, it just seemed like sort of a pipe dream because it seemed very unlikely that the Ravens would trade a back-to-back Pro Bowler in his early mid-20s and would do it for a price that the Chiefs would be willing to pay. It seemed sort of silly. But you'll get more details here in a second. But if you don't know, Orlando Brown, his father, he played 9 seasons, but he was in the league for 12 or 13 years because he missed 3 years after he got hit in the eye from a flag that Jeff Triplett threw. Went through his face. It's very weird.
Wish he would have thrown a flag in that Chiefs game.
It's very weird. There's a whole bunch of that whole story is a bizarre one. I vaguely remember
I remember watching
story.
it live. It's still like one of the craziest things I've ever seen.
Got to be incredibly strange. But he played for the Ravens for again, I think he was 8 seasons with Baltimore. All sorts. His career ended up being very strange because he missed time in the middle there with an eye injury from a flag from Jeff Triplett.
Mm-hmm.
But and then he died unexpectedly at age 40.
Yes.
And over the course of Orlando Brown Jr.'s time coming up playing football, he tells a whole story here in this 2-minute chunk that I think is fascinating. That gets into some details there and kind of personifies specifically, as this question was asking him. Adam Tyser asked him, why was it so important to play left tackle? Is it financial? Is it about the credit? Is it something else going on? And Orlando Brown Jr. explains over this 2-minute chunk here why it's so important, why he so desperately wanted to be a left tackle in the NFL. And I got to tell you, it's an answer unlike one that I've heard from anyone else ever.
I would say for me, after Baltimore signed Ronnie to the long-term extension, it was understood that, that was going to be their guy playing left tackle. And so shortly after that, I met with my family. I met with my mentor. We discussed and, we came up with the best plan. And then we spoke to my agent. And, for the most part, man, Jamal Brown, my agent, Justin Schulman, a little bit, and Joe Panos, they took care of everything. And, they got me here, man. But, Jamal did a lot, for behind closed doors, making sure that, everything was set in stone, everything was put in place to make sure that this was able to happen. And, I want to thank him personally, for allowing this for helping this happen and helping construct a plan to happen. But this has nothing to do with finances. This is to do with the opportunity to play left tackle. I grew up, my father playing in this league for 13 years as a right tackle. He was a defensive tackle, converted right tackle. In my household, if you weren't playing left tackle, I'm not going to say he disowned you, but you know what I mean? He kind of, talked bad to you. So, growing up, there's countless stories I can tell you. One of them being my freshman year of high school, at the Mather Catholic High School. They didn't think that I was ready to play left tackle, so they wanted to play me at offensive guard. And my dad went to the coach and told him, straight up, hey, if you're not playing him at left tackle, put him on defense. And so I played defensive tackle my first year. And, growing up as a child, when I committed to play this game, my dad didn't let me play. You know what I mean? I literally had to call him crying as a, 13, 12-year-old kid, begging him to let me play football. And something that he made me promise him was, that I was going to be a left tackle and I was going to play in this league for 10 plus years and be a Hall of Famer. And, something he always expressed to me and my siblings was be better than us. And to have the opportunity to live out my dream, to have the opportunity to play left tackle in this league, to play for this organization, is so special to me. And that's my reasoning. It's nothing to do with finances. It's the opportunity to live out my dream, my father's dream that he had for me, and to go out here and win as a left tackle.
It's really interesting because most of the time you have somebody get to a new place and you say, hey, where you want to play or whatever.
And then Joe Tooney will say, you know, I'll play wherever they want me. You know, I've been at left guard, but I can play wherever. Kyle Long will come in and say I'll play wherever. But for Orlando Brown Jr., there is a specific through line from his dad to him to this point now, where there's an extra level of, hey, I want to be a left tackle in the NFL. That's important to me. I want to do that. I think it's super duper interesting. One other clip here that's on a very similar lane. Seren Petro asked Orlando Brown, because you hear him in the way he talks about this, the way he exited Baltimore. It wasn't hostile. It wasn't, hey, let me out of this terrible organization so I can go play for a good organization at left tackle. The Ravens had perfectly good reason to make the choices they made at the tackle spots. Orlando Brown wanted to play left tackle somewhere. So Seren asked Orlando Brown how he was able to leave Baltimore on such friendly terms.
Well, I think it was just an understanding that, you know, this is a lot deeper than the surface. It's not about, like I said, finances. It's not about, oh my gosh, this guy's upset. You know, it was just the understanding that, and they knew my father, they knew me from a young child, and they knew, you know what I mean, the importance of things. And I remember having the opportunity to start that game against the Washington football team and at left tackle when Ronnie went down for a game. And that was so special to me because of the goals that I set as a young child. For one, being left tackle in this league, one, playing for the Baltimore Ravens at some point, you know what I mean? And to have that opportunity, like personally, that was such a special game for me. That was such a special game for my family. I remember how happy and proud my mom was for that moment. And, you know, I think at the end of the day, the organization, the Ravens, I'm just so thankful and so appreciative for everything that they did for me, for taking a chance on me after the combine, for taking, you know, everything that, you know, I dealt with and all of those things and allowing me to be myself and grow as a player. I'm just so appreciative for that organization as well. And you know, I had a great relationship with them. My family still has a great relationship with them. And, you know, I think a lot of it was just more of the understanding that, you know, this was deeper than the surface. You know, this was about, you know, living out my dream, living out my father's dream.
I just think it's super duper interesting. Because you're going to be very, very hard pressed to find anyone leaving one like notoriously well-run, well-handled organization for another one in a very similar, held in a very similar regard, where the reasoning behind the trade request and wanting to go somewhere else was, I want to play the same position on the other side of the line because it's something I told my dad I would do. Like, it's just incredibly interesting. Also, I think in continually being interesting here, I'm using the word interesting a lot, but I just think it's fascinating, is the idea that typically when somebody like forces a trade, you go, all right, well, why were they unhappy there? What is that going to happen again here or whatever? Not only was what Brown wanted incredibly easy for the Chiefs to offer because they had the void at left tackle, that was the solution there. But you also hear a guy leaving an organization speaking that kind of highly and that kind of specifically about the positives from that organization. That's also really rare. You get a lot of good messages about, I thank the fans and all that stuff, and that's fine. But his family is intrinsically like tied to the Ravens organization because his dad played there for almost his entire career. So I just think it's a fascinating storyline on pretty much every level. And I think he's going to do a lot of very, very good things at left tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll talk about the trade. We'll talk about the Chiefs' upcoming draft plans with Matt Verderame of Fansided next.
You are listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Briscoe on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Sports Center.
I'm Jim Basquil. ESPN has you covered, both radio and television, with wall-to-wall coverage of the NFL Draft, which comes Thursday. Just days away, but the 49ers still said to be undecided as to who they'll pick at 3. They're eyeing a quarterback. Mac Jones, Trey Lance, Justin Fields expected to be the candidates. Mel Kiper Jr. has a clear choice at 3.
I would take Justin Fields. I think you got to go with the guy that I think is the second-best quarterback in the draft. I don't know what he's done wrong to not be the second-best quarterback in the draft. 2, I call them hiccups against Indiana Northwestern, one of which he wasn't even 100% in. They didn't have Chris Olave, yet you overlook and forget about what he was in 2019 when he was great, and he was really good this year. Keep in mind, he didn't lose many games either, and he outplayed Trevor Lawrence in the semifinal game and played through a significant amount of pain in that football game. So, like I say, for Justin, I think it helps him. He comes in with a chip. He left Georgia. He was the second quarterback to Trevor. Like I said, those quarterbacks that slip just a bit, it gives him added motivation. He's got a ton of talent. I would go with Justin Fields.
And don't even try to figure out Major League Baseball. Day after they had one combined hit in a double-header, which is the fewest in big league history, the Atlanta Braves already have 4 runs and 4 hits on the board against the Cubs. They play the 3rd inning in a game on ESPN. NBA, the Spurs leading the Wizards as Washington seeks their 9th straight win. It's a 3-point lead in the second quarter, 59-56. Knicks in search of their 10th straight win. They are all over the Suns early, up 13, while the Sixers with Embiid and Simmons back up 14 on the Thunder.
Hey, it's Greeny, and Monday it'll be NFL Draft Week, and we'll be getting you set like nobody else as I prepare to host all the festivities beginning Thursday from Cleveland. See you then. It's Greeny, starting 10 a.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPN+.
You're listening to Almost Entirely Sports
As you're eating it, you're sobbing because you know you're ashamed of yourself.
with Joshua Briscoe.
But then afterwards, like just a complete another shame sets in. So I had to leave it off because at 31 years old, I can't go somewhere and eat and just start crying in my roast beef and cheddar because I know I'm disgusting.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
We'll talk about everything from the last week or so with the Chiefs and everything in the next week or so in the Chiefs and the NFL now with Matt Verderame of Fansided. You can follow him on Twitter at Matt Verderame. You can read his work and listen to the Stack in the Box podcast, the Stack in the Box column, fansided.com. Just you gotta listen, man. Just go follow him on Twitter. All right, everything is there. Go follow him at Matt Verderame on Twitter. Read all of his work, all the places that you can find it. Matt, this has been a bizarre little 3-day weekend for me. We didn't have a show Friday night right after this news happened. Today we got to hear from Orlando Brown Jr. The draft is just now a few days away. It's finally almost here. And if you're looking at where the Chiefs stand right now, you're feeling what exactly?
Like, if they're healthy, they're going to almost have to be beaten by a perfect game in the AFC. I don't know. I don't know that there's anyone in the conference that I feel like if the Chiefs are healthy and play a reasonably good football game, that they're going to lose them. Not in the regular season. It's one thing because sometimes if you're a team of Kansas City's ilk or Green Bay or Tampa Bay or somebody like that, you may have a game where you say, look, we're not going to unload with everything we have. We're going to hold some stuff back. Maybe you play a team that comes in with everything in the kitchen sink thrown at you, and they take a victory lap around the stadium. Those things are possible. But come playoff time, I think it's just going to be such a lift for anybody in the AFC. And, look, if the Chiefs didn't fix the left tackle position, that would have been the end. It would have been like, look, you can get pressure on the Chiefs. You can get to Mahomes' blind side. Well, that's now not a problem anymore. So what is the Chiefs' biggest problem? They don't have a third receiver?
Yeah.
Like, is that the huge issue that they have? It's not exactly a major problem.
It's also funny because I think the two biggest things are probably that receiver spot and the second edge spot, but both of them have kind of an untraditional answer to that, which is that Travis Kelce is one of your top 2 receivers, and Chris Jones is one of your top 2 pass rushers. And that's the biggest thing with the Orlando Brown Jr. trade, right? They took an obvious... we've been talking on the left tackle spot since the minute they cut Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz, and really even a little bit before that probably. they take an absolute void at left tackle, just something that has consumed the offseason. Rightfully so, I will continue to contend, and the Chiefs knew it was rightfully so as a conversation because they went out and fixed it as dramatically as they did. But they take a void and they turn it into arguably a huge strength. So what are they getting in Orlando Brown Jr.?
Well, they're getting a guy who played a couple years at right tackle, then played left tackle. He's given up, in the last 3 years, he's given up 6 sacks. Now, last year, as a left tackle, he played about 800 snaps and a couple more. No quarterback hits, no sacks. So he's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
2-time Pro Bowler, and again, only 24 years old. So this is a kid who, my understanding is from talking to sources with this, they're going to play it out. They're going to let the rookie deal go, and this is the last year of that. He's making about $3.5 million, and then Kansas City will go from there. They can tag him, they can sign him long term, they can tag him and then sign him long term, and they have a litany of options. None of which include just letting him walk out the door for some kind of a compensatory pick. So, look, I think if you're the Chiefs, you're in a really, really good spot here. I don't know that there's any downside to the trade other than if you want to say, well, they don't have a guy on a cheap rookie deal. But, all right, and if that's the worst part of this deal, I think you have to feel pretty good. Not only did you get better, a contending team in the conference got worse, and you still have 2 top 75 picks. I'm talking to people around the league. That 75 pick is kind of the marker of okay, you're going to get a good player too. You're going to have to kind of hope you're getting a good player.
Mm-hmm.
I think for the Chiefs, right, you move back. Obviously, you don't have a first. You have 2 seconds up, but ultimately, yeah, you don't have a first. You have Orlando Brown and 2 top 75 picks compared to just 2 top 75 picks.
And I want to understand the contract side of it, the choices being made here even more so. One thing that I was doing some math on earlier today is between Eric Fisher and Mitch Schwartz last year, the Chiefs were paying almost exactly $26 million to the two of them. Even if they end up paying Orlando Brown, let's say 2 years from now, he gets a deal that's a $20 million average annual value, which seems pretty plausible depending on how the next year, maybe 2 years goes. If things go well, you've got Lucas Niang making about $1 million in each of those next few years, where theoretically your starting left and right tackle for the Chiefs could get cheaper with Brown and Niang than it was with Fisher and Schwartz, which I would feel pretty good about. But with that in mind, with everything else in mind, why do you think they're choosing to do it this way and not to do it in the Frank Clark style where there is a deal done as a clause in that trade, essentially?
I think there's a little bit of, listen, we can kind of pay as we go. Now, Clark was in the same spot in the sense that he was coming out, if memory serves, and I feel like I'm having a mental block here, but was he on the last year of his rookie deal when he came to Kansas City, or was he about to hit the tag?
I don't think he was tagged and traded. I think you're right. I think he was on the last year of his deal, but now I'm also second guessing myself.
So I was thinking, I feel the same way. Regardless, look, I think the reason the Chiefs do this with Brown is because you're going to get a look at him in a different offense. You're going to get a look at him full-time as a left tackle. And there's no real rush. Like, if this thing doesn't go well, for whatever the reason, then you have an out. You're not all of a sudden locked into $60 million guaranteed or whatever it would be. $50 million probably more likely. But on the other side, if he plays great, okay, maybe it costs you $20 million a year right now. What is it going to cost you next year? 22? But the cap goes up. So I don't think it's the end of the world if the Chiefs just want to kind of sit there, as Myers saying they will, and say, look, you're going to play this year out. We're going to see how things go. But for Kansas City, there's no real risk other than if he just plays out of his mind and he's an all-pro, then the price goes up a little bit. But if that happens, you're like, all right, well, that's great. He's an all-pro.
Right.
So, there's a plus to that, too.
So I now let's talk about the draft picks you mentioned, because I think it's honestly something that Veach himself had kind of floated out there on Friday before the trade happened, where he said, look, I think the depth in this draft is in the second and third rounds is the best pocket of it. It gets a little thinner towards the end because there are simply less guys who declared for the draft this year, but they were picking 31. And I'm not sure, you mentioned 75 being kind of a drop off. I'm not sure that there is a tremendous difference from 25 to 75. I would have welcomed them trading back from 31 to pick up an extra pick. Obviously, that goes to Baltimore, but ending up with 58 and 63, for me, knowing that the tackle position is figured out, doesn't change a ton in what I'm rooting for the Chiefs to do. Like, Rashad Bateman is going from definitely, or maybe being there, but probably not being there at 31 to definitely not being there by 58. But other than that, draft crush going by the wayside, I feel pretty similarly with these picks.
I think, you always have to keep in mind, too, with this stuff, that, a lot of times everybody does these mock drafts. I think we've actually gotten to the point now where my mother might do a mock draft just to see how things play out, just to be part of the crowd.
Yeah.
The reality is, okay, nobody knows once you get past the first 15 or so picks how this is going to shape. And the reason is, all of a sudden there's a run on a certain position, and then that position goes crazy. Well, while that position's going crazy, all these other guys get pushed back and pushed back. So what's going to happen? I guarantee you, when the Chiefs come on the clock for the first time, now, don't know what position it'll be. There's going to be some position that is backlogged. You're going, wow, that guy was projected to go 25th overall. Now, that may not be a position the Chiefs need. Like, maybe it's a running back, and, okay, well, the Chiefs are going to take a running back. But if it's a position of need, like if it were, let's say corner gets pushed back, and you're sitting there, I think the Chiefs at that point go, that's great. We'll take a corner. I mean, look, I'll give a perfect example. Juan Thornhill, 2 years ago. He was widely thought of in the NFL to be a late first-round pick. And he and Nasser Adderley just kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back by runs on the board at other positions. And the Chiefs end up taking Thornhill, ends up being a very good player for them. And they get him in the late second round. So I think for Kansas City, there's not enough of a difference between 31 and 57 that you're not going to trade for Orlando Brown. To be very honest, when I saw the trade come over the line, I saw it from Adam Schefter, and I actually texted a source immediately who I knew would have knowledge of that trade and said, I just want to make sure this is the correct term, and not because I wasn't second-guessing Adam, but people make mistakes, whatever, there could be a typo. I could not believe that she's going to somehow hit that.
Yeah.
I really thought maybe it was just he typed it out quickly, and it was actually like a fourth, or maybe even the Ravens got a second. There were some other things. For Kansas City to get a second-round pick back, I know you're giving up a third, the fourth, and next year's fifth, but realistically, I look at it like this. The first-round pick is for Brown. Well, next year's picks are fifth and sixth. Who cares? You cancel those out, right? It doesn't really matter. So in essence, Baltimore traded its second-round pick for the Chiefs' third and fourth-round pick. And now doesn't have a right tackle.
Yeah.
Like, I just do not understand. Like, I get it. They might get a tackle with their first-round pick, but wouldn't you just rather have Orlando Brown? I don't know. That's just the way I see it.
I think it's one of the most interesting trades, at least that the Chiefs have made in recent memory, because I can make that you can make that sort of argument and go, wait a second, now why did it work out exactly like this? And where was the discrepancy in what the Ravens were valuing and what draft pick trade chart the Chiefs may have been using or whatever? But in reality, I am happy with how the picks played out. It's going to end up being a contract issue in the future, and I think that he'll be playing well enough. Hope he'll be playing well enough. That's not a huge issue. Which also is something you could say and that you tweeted about a little bit with Joe Thuney. It is hilarious to me that the Chiefs' left side of their offensive line this year is going to be Orlando Brown Jr. and Joe Thuney, and that those two guys are Thuney's the highest paid, has the largest contract for a guard in NFL history. Orlando Brown is going to make a lot of money very soon. What exactly can that do? Because we've talked a lot about an offensive line. We've talked about the stars versus the only being as strong as your weakest link. With those two guys together on the left side of the offensive line, what is that going to do for the Chiefs' offense?
Well, look, I think it does a few things. First of all, assuming those guys are healthy, and I'm pretty confident saying I don't think either's ever missed a snap.
Nope.
In the NFL.
They're both. So I would literally have this up just a second ago. Brown didn't start every game of his 2018 season,
Correct.
but he appeared in all 16. Thuney's never missed. I think you're right. I think he may have never missed a
He's
snap.
never missed a game.
Yeah.
I know for a fact he's never missed a game. And right,
Yeah.
Brown's never missed one due to injury.
Right.
So this is an incredibly durable group, at least to this point in their careers. And I just look at it and say, by doing that, you are now so good on the line. You could make an argument that left side of the line is the best left side of the line in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I mean, maybe with the Packers where you look at a guy, like Bakhtiari when he's healthy, and Elgin Jenkins, but they're right up there. Okay, so by doing that, you now can help the other guys. You can slide over. You can do some different things. And I think if you're Kansas City, you know how much of a help that might be to Niang?
Yeah.
Before you were going to have a rookie left tackle. Now it's like, well, don't worry about it. We got Brown. We're fine.
Yeah.
If we're going to chip, we're going to chip on the right side. We're fine with that. And it also helps Mahomes in the sense, the obvious reason, he can see it coming.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it doesn't matter if it's a freeway like it was in the Super Bowl. Like, if I stand in traffic, I can see it coming all I want. I'm still going to get hit by a damn Mazda Miata. Right? Like, that's the way life works. But I think for this team, having that left side of the line just really solidifies things for them. And now and the other part is just, too, not to dovetail too far off the question, but you go into the draft now, and you don't have this massive, massive pressing need where it is just, look, we're taking a tackle here because we have to.
Yeah.
They're now going to go into this draft. I mean, let's be honest, Briscoe. They could draft you, me, Rudy, and some guy off the street, and they're still the favorites in the AFC.
Yeah, right.
You'd like to get a little more out of the draft.
You'd like to.
but
a pretty good value.
Yeah, fair enough. But if you come out of it with even developmental guys, maybe one guy, you're still a team that going into the season, people are going to look at and say, yeah, that team should win 50 games.
Yeah.
I mean, they're that level of talent. And I don't know they would have felt quite that confident before the trade with Brown.
No, I think you're right, because before the trade with Brown, you're talking about, hey, there is an Achilles heel right there. Like, we're all pointing at it. We all see it. Can you exploit it? I don't know, because you've still got a Greek god trying to protect that specific issue, right? Like, it doesn't mean that the Chiefs are doomed, but there is clearly a weak point that's going to lead off, the CBS keys to the game every week for the first half of the season is going to be get pressure against left tackle Lucas Niang, or test rookie Tevin Jenkins, or Samuel Cosby, or whatever. And so now we get to avoid that, which is maybe the greatest gift of it all. But you're right about that they could draft us, and I don't think it would change how people looked at him this year, which would not have been the case prior. But what I've noticed for myself even is I have turned my eyes fully in this draft class really to saying, all right, well, if they end up with with a guy at I went through a mock because everyone and their mothers is doing them, as we previously established. But I ended up with my last 3 or 4 picks were all guys. You know what? I like them at this position with this trait, and if they don't see if they redshirt like Lucas Niang did in 2021, all that matters to me is that they can step in 2022 at 4 or 5 positions. I found that to be the case. And it's really important that they have those guys, because that's where you re-up your talent without having to pay everybody $1 billion like they're going to have to with Orlando Brown, and they're doing with Frank Clark and all of that. But it really changes the sort of year target for most of these guys to make an impact. I'd love it if the 2 second-round picks were both making impacts in 2021. But beyond that, I just would like guys that fill out the roster and that step in a year down the line.
If you draft guys, and this is, in my opinion, he's a very good day 3 pick, but if you draft Rashad Fenton, that's great. That's fine with this team. I'll give an example. Now, he was a 2nd-round pick a few years ago. Everybody goes crazy with Mecole Hardman. He's not quite where we want him to be. And I get that. The guy's had a couple of years where he's had over 500 yards receiving. He's a good player in the return game. I get the frustration that, hey, there's more there. That being said, if Mecole Hardman goes out this year and maybe just jumps up to 700 yards, they're fine.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people act because they're just so used to having the magic show in town that, well, if they don't have 8 guys that can go for 1,000 yards, well, what are we going to do? And the reality is, the rest of the leagues are you kidding me? You have Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Who cares? If Mecole Hardman has 50 catches for 700 yards and 5 touchdowns, you're good.
Yeah.
And these players, if you can get another receiver and you can beef up that group, hey, that's great. And I think they will do that. But do I think it's imperative like it was to get a left tackle? No. They needed a left tackle. Now they have that. And I think, again, Baltimore did him a big favor. I sat there and really thought about what teams have ever been in a position where Baltimore and Kansas City are, just to say, big, legitimate contenders in the same conference, and made a trade of real consequence. And the last one I can think of, and I can't think of one even before it, is Charles Haley in 1992, going from the Niners to the Cowboys. And Charles Haley immediately won 2 Super Bowls those next 2 years with the Cowboys, and they beat the Niners in the NFC title game both years.
That's so good.
It is literally the last one I can think of. And the Cowboys gave up a second and a third round pick. I can't think, and maybe somebody out there, I've had people say, what about Bledsoe? What about McNabb? But the teams they were going to were awful.
Yeah.
Like, the Ravens willfully were just like, here's a really good young left tackle to fill your biggest need, and hopefully we can beat you in January.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still very surprised by it, honestly.
The other thing about specifically with Brown that I thought was so interesting, I don't know if you saw or heard a bunch of his presser from earlier today, but he went into some more detail about just like talking about his dad and how really all of this, it wasn't necessarily about getting paid left tackle money, because honestly the split still in the NFL right now is narrowing, every year it seems. And it wasn't about hating the Ravens organization. In fact, it was quite the opposite. He still has nothing but good things to say about Baltimore, and I tend to believe that because it was also his dad's organization, all of that. Like, he just wanted to play left tackle because he told his dad he would. Like, it is a genuinely like unmatched sort of reason for a guy requesting a trade with an incredible amount of what seems to be mutual respect across the board. It's like the least toxic trade demand of all time that seems like it worked out pretty well for everybody. The Ravens maybe taking the shortest end of the stick, but I just thought even his story and like logic and request and everything was incredibly unique because I've never seen anything quite like that.
Well, I have nothing to build off with that other than to say, no, here's one other thing for Chief fans to just chew on and think about. So what happens if in like real late July or early August, Mitchell Schwartz says, you know what, I feel good. I'd like to come back. I think if you're the Chiefs, you will have first right of refusal. Mitch Schwartz, as I wrote about a month ago, was a big part of Joe Thuney going to Kansas City.
Yeah.
And Mitchell Schwartz lives in KC, built a big house in Kansas City, loved his time with the team. And I can tell you, if he comes back, and it's maybe a 50-50 proposition at this point of whether or not he will, but if he does, and he says, hey, you know what, guys, I'm healthy, I'm good, I got another year in me. If you're Kansas City, say, hey, here's 1 year, $10 million. That sounds great.
Yeah.
And Lucas can, essentially, because his contract didn't hold last year, it's his rookie year all over again. He was going to sit as a rookie anyway.
Yep.
If you're the Chiefs and you end up with Brown and Schwartz as your tackle, with Thuney and Blythe and either Long or LDT inside, you feel good.
I would like that.
A hell of a lot worse.
I am going to go out on a limb and tell you that I would like that. Because here's the other thing. This is something I mentioned earlier, and I don't necessarily like how I'm phrasing this because it feels like I'm trying to be a downer, and I'm really not. The Chiefs didn't lose the Super Bowl because of their starting offensive line last year. They lost the Super Bowl because of their third-string offensive line last year, which is unfair, right? And like that's not really a criticism. It's just an observation, right? But if all of a sudden now your backup left tackle is Lucas Niang, your backup right tackle is Mike Rimmers, if Schwartz comes back and still has some sort of nagging injury or just he simply gets hurt some other way again, or God forbid Orlando Brown gets hurt, even if it's just for a couple of weeks, anybody on the interior, that line that you just created is legitimately like too deep at every position. There's a step down in talent, obviously, from number 1 to number 2, but that would be all right with me if I can stay out here on this limb.
I think, too, if you're Kansas City, look, you're right, by the way. You're 100% right. Like, they lost the Super Bowl because it got to a point where they were starting people, like, off the street in that game. And, hey, listen, it's not an excuse. You lost. They didn't have the depth that they needed, and they got their rear ends kicked all over the field in Tampa that night. But I also think, as we've seen with the Chiefs, that it's clear they are not going to lose that way again. Now, they may lose another way.
Mm-hmm.
They're not losing that way.
Yeah.
And this is a study, this offseason, and of course this will fall on every desk here in America, but this is a study in why when fans go berserk after like an hour of free agency, This is like, wait a few minutes.
Right.
Just give it a few minutes. Like, the Chiefs went out and got Tooney. Everybody's happy about Tooney. They don't get Trent Williams. They can't get Smith-Schuster out of Pittsburgh. And people are just going insane. Like, what's gone on? We can't get Josh Reynolds. We're not even an NFL team anymore. And I give Veach a lot of credit in this. He could have panicked and just said, well, we'll sign Russell Okung. And this trade never happened.
Mm-hmm.
They stayed patient. They waited. They bought some time. And you know what? Turned out to be the right decision. They got Jerron Reed for a steal, who somehow has been forgotten this offseason. He's one of the better tackles in football. You look at the Chiefs now. I would ask anybody who covers the league to tell me who got a better trio of players this offseason in Kansas City. Good luck finding them.
Yeah.
I thought about it. I don't know that you could.
I like that. That's really good. I like that perspective on it. Let me shift gears 100%. I want to ask you a couple of bigger picture draft questions, mostly out of just a morbid curiosity, and I want to go 1, 2, 3. Are the Jags and Jets gonna get it right with Lawrence and Wilson? Do you think that should be 1 and 2? And then also, what the hell are the Niners doing? And will we all be here tomorrow?
So my first part is, who cares? No.
Which part?
To all of it.
Are we going to be here tomorrow?
To all of it.
Yeah. I mean, are we going to live till Sunday?
Right.
I think the Jags, if Lawrence doesn't work out, you can never blame them.
Yeah.
I mean, unless they just ruin him as a prospect or something. But, he's clearly the pick.
Yeah.
If they pick him and it just doesn't pan out for whatever reason, he just flames out, well, I mean, what are you going to do? The Jets, I would take Fields. I do not get it. I do not understand this just cooling on him to the point that it feels like if there's a guy who's going to really slide, it could be him.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the Jags are going to do right. The Jets, to me, prove it to me. Okay, I grew up in New York. I've seen the Jets up close and personal for the better part of 30 years. Show me something before I believe that they're doing anything right. And then with the Niners, I really kind of think they just really want to take Mac Jones, but the vitriol towards them doing that has been so out of control that now they're second-guessing themselves. But if you're going to trade that amount of capital, this idea that they just don't know who they're going to take is insane.
It's insane.
Maybe it works out, right? Maybe they just get lucky and whoever they take, Lance, Jones, it worked out. But this is the equivalent of driving down the freeway going in reverse at 90 miles an hour and you somehow got home. It doesn't mean it was a good idea.
Right.
The process was still a train wreck. It wasn't a good idea. And that's how I feel about the Niners right now. This might work out. They might get to the garage.
Mm-hmm.
But this is not the way this is supposed to be done. I don't know how you could do all this and still have no clue how this is going to go down on Thursday night is just mind-boggling to me.
It's baffling, dude. I don't know. So try if you can get into what we believe to be the Niners' head. Could you sell Mac Jones to me? Can you explain what I'm not seeing?
I think for them, they see a guy who is fairly polished, who can run the offense because they play a lot of under center football. Okay, they're not one of these teams that plays out of the gun like almost every team in the league these days. So Jones played a lot of that as well. He played in a very as pro style of an offense as you can possibly find in college football.
Mm-hmm.
I think they see him. They see he's got good feet in the pocket, which he does, and I think they see that and they say, "Look, he can go out there and be our point guard, distribute the ball." I think a lot of this, and I want to press this with saying I like Kyle Shanahan. I think he's a very good coach. Sometimes if you think you're the smartest guy in the room, you might be. But sometimes if you think you're the smartest guy in the room, you're setting yourself up for kind of looking like a fool.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know that that's going to go this way for him. But my point is, I do think there's a little bit of, it doesn't matter who we have. We can just put Mac Jones out there and it's fine.
Right.
And it's okay, I mean, maybe that's true, but wouldn't you rather have the better talent?
Yeah.
Peter Schrager on Good Morning Football today said something to the effect of that it was his belief that Shanahan feels like, he could win the same, or I shouldn't say it. I believe the statement was that he could have the offense would run efficiently as long as the quarterback listened to Shanahan, whether it was Deshaun Watson or C.J. Beathard. Okay, I mean, maybe that's true, but I'd sure as hell rather have Deshaun Watson's
Right.
Right? Like, that seems like the reason you lost the Super Bowl 2 years ago.
It sure
because
does.
in the fourth quarter, one of those guys was really good, and the other one looked like me for the last 7 minutes of the game. Like, that's a problem. You know, so, I don't know. I think if you're the Niners, I do think there's like this idea of comfort, and that you think Jones can just operate. But, I mean, okay. So what, if he's Andy Dalton, congratulations.
Yeah.
It's a bizarre way, in my opinion, to look at a draft pick that high.
Yeah, if you think you can win with Deshaun Watson or C.J. Beathard, just pay C.J. Beathard to hit minimum wage and do it that way.
I feel
let Mac Jones fall. I'm confused. I don't know.
I feel like if you sampled, or if I sampled, a dozen people in the NFL who are involved in personnel decisions, and I said to them, is Mac Jones' ceiling higher than what Jimmy Garoppolo currently is? It would not be a unanimous survey.
Yeah.
Like some people certainly would say, yeah, I think he's better than that. But some people would say, yeah, I think he's Kirk Cousins. I think he's Jimmy Garoppolo. And to me, it's not that those guys are bad players, but if you're going to trade that amount of capital to get up there, like, that guy can't be Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
That guy's got to be a top 5 player. Like, he can't. He's got to be, maybe not Mahomes. Okay, that's outrageous. But maybe he's got to be Josh Allen. Maybe he's got to be, Russell Wilson on the light.
Ryan Tannehill. I would like current Ryan Tannehill.
Better than that.
Some like.
He's got to be Andrew Luck.
Yeah.
Like, he's got to be that.
Yeah.
Like, he's not that, and he's Derek Carr. Like, Derek Carr's fine, but like, you're not trading 2 firsts and a third for Derek Carr.
Yeah.
So that's where I fall. I think if you're the Niners, there has to be a ton of upside. Yeah. If there's not a ton of upside, then what are you doing to get that high from? I just don't understand it.
Are the Broncos going to give Fields at 9? Because I don't really want them to, if I'm being honest.
I hear you. Look, I think if you're Denver, and I've been saying this for 2 months now, if you're in a position where Fields gets past 3, and it looks like he's going to, I am calling up Atlanta and saying, look, I'm not screwing around with this because I don't want New England jumping in here or Washington. Like, we will give you our first and second round picks. And if you go by some of these charts, that's enough. Some charts say it's not quite enough, whatever. I'd call up and offer them that, and if it takes giving them like a 4th or a 5th, too, because let's all be real. I know we all feel the same way about this. Drew Lock is Kansas City's fever dream for the next decade.
Yeah, I'd love more, please. Yes.
there is not a Chiefs fan or analyst or someone in the organization in the world who says, geez, you know what, if they bring back Drew Lock, I don't know how we're going to hold on to the division. Like, he led the league in interceptions last year and played 13 games. I mean, he's awful. If you're Denver, you have to know. The only way we're competing in this division, not just with Mahomes, but now with Herbert, is to improve at that position monumentally. And I think if they don't, then you're just kind of either stuck in neutral or reverse, depending on how you look at it.
It would be just bonkers to me if they go, you know what, we're going to give it one more run with Drew Lock. I don't know. I don't know what they would see. Because even last year, man, like I was cracking jokes whenever the Chargers drafted Herbert. Because I was like, oh, that doesn't, like, you guys got the wrong one here. And he obviously looked incredible. But at least, like I remember writing at the time, like, I don't think that he's going to work out. But you know what? They took a quarterback. And that's what you have to do to catch up to the Chiefs with any chance whatsoever. The Broncos are going to try to do it with Drew Lock? Okay.
Look, you know what? I've said this now for 2 years. Like, I actually think Derek Carr's a pretty good quarterback. I think he's probably around like 12 to 14 for the league. Okay? If I were the Raiders, I would be trying to package him and trade him.
Yeah.
Because you're never winning anything outside of a Week 5 game at Arrowhead. You're just not going to. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You have to look at the Chiefs right now the same way the Jets and the Dolphins and the Bills had to look at the Pats for 20 years.
Yeah.
You are not beating them with a bunch of guys. Like, you have to go out and you have to find somebody who is at minimum a top 6 to 8 quarterback. And if you don't have that, you might as well just take the balls and go home because they're not going to lose. I mean, if Mahomes is upright, the Chiefs are going to win 12, 13 games every year. They're just too talented. He's too great. Reed's too good of a coach. Like they're going to put enough around these guys that they will keep winning. So I think for Denver, you have to find an answer. I expect the Raiders to have one more year card, and then they'll figure it out. Herbert appears to be the answer for the Chargers. Good for them. But, we saw that for 20 years in the AFC East, where it was like, hey, we got Mark Sanchez. Okay.
Yep.
That's great.
Yep.
Because that's fine. Hey, we got J.P. Losman. Okay. Good luck. I think that's where all these teams are in the AFC West. They've got to find that answer. And I think the Chargers may have. The other two teams, not so much.
Yeah, I think you're right. Matt, it's always great to talk to you. Thank you for making time for us on a Monday this week with no show last Friday, no show this Friday either. And I say this with all sincerity, absolute worst of luck to your Knicks tonight. They've been up on the Suns for the entire first half, and the Suns are closing it out right now, but I'm not enjoying it.
I don't care how you feel about it. The Knicks have been dead for 20 years to me, and it's like the arm coming up from the ground at this point. And I'm rooting for the apocalypse if we're sticking with the metaphor.
Well, I hope that the apocalypse falls short tonight, but I do also hope that the Knicks stay above Beards' Celtics in the standings, because honestly, at this point, that is worth more to me than pretty much any other basketball currency. They just dangle that over Beards' head.
Well, good luck to you. I hope you choke on an RB.
Me too, actually. Thank you, Matt.
Take care.
With curly fries, by the way. Oh, hold on. Verderame, you still there? Hold on. Oh, he lost him. Call him back really quick. Beards. Call him back. I got an Arby's question for him. Really quick. I'll tell you this while we're split here. You can follow him on Twitter, @Matt Verderame. Mm-hmm. Check out the Stacking the Box podcast, the Stacking the Box column. You can go to the link. His author profile for Fansided is on his Twitter account. It is there. Beards is putting the phone down. There's no one on hold right now.
Voicemail,
huh?
Try it again.
Remind me next time we have Verderame on. Don't worry about it. Next time we have Verderame on, I need to ask him about Arby's having crinkle cut fries now. Because that's an abomination. I'm not willing to stand for that. But I would put them in my mouth if they were in front of me. I have moved on that one. Of course, I would eat the fries. I'm not an animal. I'm a human being who likes French fries. Follow him on Twitter @Matt Verderame. We'll talk about some of the stuff he brought up, some Chiefs draft plans. We got Matt Derrick in 20 minutes, and more Orlando Brown Jr. sound. We got plenty to get to, talking almost entirely Chiefs tonight here on Almost Entirely Sports.
Did you know you can listen to Almost Entirely Sports anywhere, anytime? Well, you can. Just search for Almost Entirely Sports wherever you get your podcasts. You're listening to Almost Entirely Sports
This game is so violent that the congratulatory butt smacks are aggressive.
with Joshua Briscoe
Put me straight to the injured reserve with a bruised butt cheek.
on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Thanks again to Matt Verderame for joining us. A handful of things here from the Twitch chat. One from Mad Dog Texas Jones. I don't think I've seen the Twitch chat before. Said, just a reminder to keep Rudy from self-mutilation on the face to keep himself awake. Rudy, gotta stop that. Stop hitting yourself in the face.
It's not a hard hit. Just
Beard,
sometimes
can you
you
get,
just
at the very
gotta...
least, hold on. We gotta get this for the video. We're gonna get the video. Hold on. And do it now. And Rudy, go ahead. And all right, well, the camera's off you, Rudy. It was still on you. I lied.
I figured.
I lied. It
Ah,
was still
you
there.
got me.
Also,
Really learning lessons from Brett Veach, aren't you?
That's true.
He learns from you about the whatever you said earlier that you were taking credit for that I've now forgotten. You learned from him on how to be a pathological liar.
I'd like to read a Twitch comment here from JT. I'm going to read this comment and then Beards, if you could just go ahead and crank my mic because we're going to go to Whisper Town. We're going to have a very I might need a we might need imaging for this at some point where it's whenever Josh whispers the uncomfortable truth. That's the new segment, okay?
Oh boy.
JT says all this OL talk has me imagining all the yards CEH is going to pile up. Time of possession will never be in question. It's a funny comment. It's a pretty good comment.
It's true though.
But now go ahead and crank it, Beards. Now it's time for Josh Whispers an Uncomfortable Truth. Beards is it's too loud. You gotta turn it off. We have to have crippling silence. The very quiet underlying of the music is fine. So JT's comment was like largely a joke, and I get that. And I think it was funny. Can you turn my mic up a little bit, please?
It is up.
A little higher.
No.
More, please.
There.
I'm a professional.
Professional what?
I can't hear you, Josh.
I have my headphones on. I can do this. If you don't turn it up more, I'm going to take the guard off.
I did turn it up.
Turn it all the way up.
That's too much.
Blast it.
There we go.
Blast it.
There we go.
100%.
Yep, we're good.
Beards, turn it up.
We're good.
Beards.
Yep.
I'm going to scream if you don't turn it up the whole
You're
way.
at 100% like that light is
This is good. Perfect. Okay, so here's the thing.
See, this is why I wasn't going to do that.
Well, it doesn't matter. I'm in control.
Are you?
I am.
Are you sure about that?
I'll have you excommunicated. Oh, no, the fan turned on. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Clyde is going to have a better season this year, and I'm going to have to deal with so many absolutely useless tweets and comments that are going to be about how it was a great pick. He ran for a bajillion yards this year on a bajillion carries. Wow, it's incredible. Whenever Clyde runs left, he averages 6 yards a carry. I guess you just think that anyone could do that, right, Josh? Yes, pretty much. I think Darrell Williams is also going to have a better year next year whenever running to the left because he's running behind two incredibly talented players at left tackle and left guard. I think that's important. And as it goes to show time and time again that statistically speaking, and really by the eye test for pretty much everybody except for Jamal Charles in the history of the sport, at least in the modern era,
I miss him.
It's pretty evident that the running game hinges more on the blocking and the scheme than it does on the individual player. It's kind of the point. You look at Kyle Shanahan's success with everything he's done in San Francisco is a pretty good example of that. You get really excellent offensive line play, you get a great scheme, and then you get three dudes you've never heard of before. All of a sudden, Raheem Mostert now is your number one pick in fantasy. This has been Uncomfortable Truths, whispered quietly with Josh. Well, it's a little loud, Beards.
I have some news.
Oh, news!
Not super.
Hit it, Beards!
Not super breaking.
Hit it, Beards!
About 90 minutes old. It's just now popped up on my timeline.
Well,
Kansas coaching surge seemingly in the home stretch. From what I've heard from sources today, most attention was around these four coaches: Buffalo's Lance Leopold, Army's Jeff Monken, Louisiana Tech Skip Holtz, and hashtag Gig'em, I can only assume that's Texas A&M defensive coordinator Mike Elko. From Adam Rittenberg from ESPN, who I thought I followed, who I am now following. Okay, you might have a new head coach relatively soon. I would assume by the end of the week is the goal.
Mad Dog
Mad Dog Texas Jones said, "Love y'all," with a bunch of exclamation points. Thank you with a bunch of exclamation points. Is that not breaking news to you, Beards? Make sure everybody on Twitch right now. Make sure everybody on Twitch, if you love what this is. Beards, can I get a whisper? Can I whisper, please, real quick?
Yeah, we're good.
Crank it.
Yeah, we're good.
Crank it.
Yeah.
I can hear that it's not cranked up. Turn it up. If you're watching the show on Twitch right now, make sure you hit the follow button. And if you do it when no one else is doing it, you'll get a little notification that'll pop up. This will say your username on the video. It'll be right over there.
Other side.
No, it's over there. I got it right.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, it's opposite the little mascots. It's the
No.
reason. It is.
No, that's where the chat
It'll
box
be right
is.
over here. That's what I said.
That's what he's talking.
You can
I'm
follow.
so confused.
You follow us if you're watching the show on any of our video pages. Follow us or like the page to make sure you never miss an episode. Just follow us on Twitch, and also Facebook and YouTube.
I don't even know what's happening right now.
The whisper effect doesn't work if you're not turned
Oh
up.
boy,
Breaking news. This better be good, Rudy.
this is pretty wild. I don't know who the Angels are playing, but they're through 1.5 innings right now.
Feel like this isn't going to be worth it.
Shohei Ohtani has allowed 4 runs, but he has also scored or driven in 4 runs for the Angels. So he's given up 4 runs and also been responsible for homers. He became the first pitcher to be pitching in a game while leading Major League Baseball in home runs since Babe Ruth, which is pretty impressive. It's just impressive. I honestly thought you might appreciate that. It's pretty wild.
Beards, can I get the whisper filter,
what's
please?
wrong? I
No,
misjudged.
we're good.
Crank it up real quick, Beards.
I misjudged.
Beards,
happens?
Rudy, it is like it's pretty interesting, and I really do think that Shohei Ohtani is fascinating, but also want to get some of this Orlando Brown audio. It's not really your fault, just a matter of taste, you know?
I mean, it wasn't like it was meant to be a long thing. Honestly, I thought we moved on from it by now. I just thought we went, oh, that's interesting, and then we went and moved on.
Oh, that's interesting! Matt Verderame said he was surprised that Orlando Brown ended up heading to Kansas City. He was surprised that the Ravens would take their biggest competition in the conference and then trade their right tackle to them to become that team's left tackle. I think it makes sense for the Ravens if you think that you're getting a good haul of draft picks back. I would have expected there to be essentially a rival tax that the Chiefs would have had to have paid. They didn't. They got Orlando Brown at a very least a fair market value, even with the contract still coming. But Orlando Brown said he himself was not expecting to hear from the Chiefs.
Man, I was really surprised, man. I was really surprised. Gosh, I didn't see it coming. You know what I mean? If you would have asked me, when I requested my trade, where I would have been, I wouldn't even been able to tell you then. But I was very surprised to be here, and I'm just glad that they made the move. I definitely think I'm the guy that they want, the guy that they need.
I also think that both of those things are true, and I also didn't really expect these teams to be the ones to work together, but I'm glad that it worked out. Nate Taylor, our friend of The Athletic, of the Times Ours podcast, et cetera, asked Orlando Brown about if he was optimistic about playing for the Chiefs beyond just this season, because that is going to be a very large aspect of how this trade ultimately looks in the rearview mirror. Is he's not going to just be here for 1 year, but what is the plan from that point forward? How does he feel about it? Also, Nate asked about how he's feeling about the Chiefs' offense, what he knows as he enters Kansas City.
I want to be here for a long time. I do. And, I'm going to make sure I take care of my part, and that's handling my business on the football field. As far as the offensive scheme here, I've watched a lot of film on Kansas City, just like I'm sure every other NFL team or NFL player has. I know a little bit about the system. I look forward to learning a lot more, but I'm just excited, man, to be in the system, to have the opportunity to really showcase my talents. They do a lot of different things here than we did in Baltimore, just schematically. So, man, I'm really looking forward to that.
Some of those differences, I think, are going to be a bit of a challenge in some ways for reasons we'll talk to Seth Kaiser about tomorrow. And we might talk to Matt Derrick about here in about 5 minutes, but I think regardless, it's going to be a very good relationship between these two. Beards, can you blast my mic real quick? JT on Twitch says this whispering thing is weird, even by AES standards. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, JT. But anyway, Matt Derrick. Turn on my microphone! Matt Derrick is next.
You're listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Briscoe on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Jim Basketball, let's get you caught up on the win streak teams in the NBA. The Knicks in search of their 10th straight. Their lead on the Suns is down to 1 in the third, 71-70. Meantime, the Wizards, after their 9th straight win, have jumped on top of the Spurs 109-103. Bradley Beal has 33 points. The Sixers getting Simmons and Embiid back in the lineup, and they are running roughshod on the Thunder 102-70, while the Lakers lead is a mere point in Orlando, fourth quarter up 88-87. What about the night in Major League Baseball? Cubs Braves, it's game on ESPN. Chris Bryant's grand slam at Chicago. In this one, they've just squared the game at 5 against Atlanta. Dansby Swanson has gone yard for the home team. They play the 5th. Angels Rangers, with LA getting Shohei Ohtani back on the mound, but it's a 4-4 game early in this one. Mike Trout back in that Angels lineup as well, has 2 hits and a run knocked in. Ohtani has served up 4 runs, though, in this start. NFL, the 49ers still conflicted on who they go with the 3rd overall pick in Thursday's draft. Mac Jones, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, the perhaps choices. Then it forwards to Falcons, Dominique Foxworth, on who they should lean towards.
I think I'd go for Pitts and go all in on this roster that they have now and maybe try to out-offense everybody, because that is their only hope, and return Matt Ryan to that MVP level, Super Bowl losing Matt Ryan that we saw a few years ago.
So Kyle Pitts of Florida is his choice. Sean Lee retiring after 11 seasons with the Cowboys.
We're back on Tuesday, and 2 days before the NFL draft, Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin is the spot to be. We got everybody. Heisman Trophy winner Devontae Smith and North Dakota State quarterback Trey Lance are with us Tuesday morning on ESPN Radio.
This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Briscoe.
If you don't make your cheek pink, you're not staying awake.
Exactly.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
That one's worse without context.
That was my goal.
Aren't
Yeah.
they all?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that one is just jarring. Truly jarring. And it was the voice of Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. He joins us now. You can follow him on Twitter at Matt Derrick. You can read his work at ChiefsDigest.com. He also wrote a book. You know that already. TriumphBooks.com/ChiefsWin. You can go check it out there if you want, along with everything else.
He wrote 2 books, really.
No, that's true.
The second one just, never saw the light of day.
He wrote 2 books about the Chiefs, and one of them was published, and you can buy that one, and we're talking to him now. Hey, Matt.
I appreciate the love and all, but there's a 3rd book,
Oh, man.
How can you forget Showtime?
Oh, my goodness.
Wow.
Oh, you know how I could forget, Matt? You know how I forgot? It's just that pretty much every mailbox here at Sports Radio 810 filled up with a copy of Showtime. I think Rudy got a copy.
That was really good on my bookshelf.
Beard's got a copy. The Border Patrol got a copy. Each of them. Somebody didn't, Matt.
Now, to be fair,
somebody did it.
Did you get book number 2?
No.
I didn't either. Okay, so I'm still up on you. I'm still 1 book up.
No.
Wow, I do vaguely recall. Yes, you for some reason did not make the cut. It wasn't my cut. You were on the original list.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like if I was like second on the original list, it would have gotten me a copy. I feel like they would have cut Beards off the bottom. But instead, a fictional character named Beards McFly got a copy.
I wasn't even a full-time employee at that time, John. Part-time.
And I think exactly. I'm confident the copy was sent to Beards McFly.
It absolutely had to have been. How much is shipping? Because I feel like $15 for At Last. It's still for like a shelf piece. I feel like I can make that happen. It just really depends on how much shipping is at TriumphBooks.com.
And you know what? The next time I see you, Josh, I will take care of you.
No, I don't. That's fine, man. I'm gonna just go ahead and. That sounded very menacing. It sounded like if you don't buy this book, I'm gonna have your kneecaps broken.
That is a good drop for next time out of context.
Yeah, that one's gonna bring a whole course of problems. I can tell already. Let me see. Let's see. Enter zip
Next time
code.
I see you, I'm going to take care of you.
Yeah. Yes, it's not good. It wasn't better the second time you said it, but I do appreciate it. It's only like $3 for standard shipping. All right, I'm just gonna have to buy this. I'll just buy this book myself. That's the least I can do. I'll try to give back to Matt. You come on the show and I complain that you're not giving me more of your work for free. It's a real D-bag move by me, if I'm being honest.
At least, hey, you know what? I would never say that about you, as far as you know.
Yeah, and that's all that matters to me because I am like a golden retriever, and I just see what's ever in front of me, and I hear what's being said to me, and everything else, who cares what's happening behind the scenes? Let's talk about Orlando Brown Jr., if that's okay with you, because the Chiefs, for all of the conversations that we have had over the last couple of months, there have been a few shows where I'm pretty sure we just repeated the same things for basically 30 minutes and then did it again the next week. But now we've actually got something major that happened on Friday. The Chiefs make this trade for Orlando Brown. I want to talk about the presser today in a minute, but first, take me back to Friday afternoon when you see, presumably, that tweet from Adam Schefter, who was on it first. You're thinking what at that time?
I was thinking that a lot of the Brett Veach interview press conference that I have transcribed, and a good chunk of this story that I've written can just be thrown straight into the trash can. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
And my next thought was, oh, good grief! What did the Chiefs give up?
Yeah.
Because I figured I figured that the only reason I did not think that this was likely to happen is that I figured that the Ravens would want a lot, and especially to trade him to the Chiefs, who you've got to believe is the team that you're chasing in the AFC. And that's the next thing. I mean, seeing the compensation, and I'm like, what in the world am I missing here?
Yeah.
Because it's a really good deal for the Chiefs.
And once all of those pieces do come together, there's obviously the eventual sort of thing hanging over the Chiefs' head that eventually they have to pay him. That will eventually happen, reportedly not planning on doing it before this season. But that's really the only factor that's not already kind of set into stone. So by what you just said, I'm taking it as if you think the Chiefs got the deal that any team would have been pretty lucky to have, especially the team bringing that competition to the Ravens. And also now it obviously fills their biggest need.
Yeah, and, if you want to compare it compensation-wise to the Frank Clark trade, it's different. I mean, because in a lot of these trade situations, because like the Frank Clark deal was contingent on Clark agreeing to a new deal with the Chiefs before the trade.
Right.
And that's important to the compensation. I mean, the skeptic in me looks at this deal and says, what am I missing? Because for the Ravens to let a player like this go in a position of need to an opponent that they need to get past for honestly as little as they gave up. I mean, it's still a first-round pick. I mean, that's still that. But to give that up, I mean, I'm like, is there something about Orlando Brown Jr. that I don't know? Is there an part of the equation that's missing? I don't see that. So I've got to assume that once again, part of it is that yes, it's different compensation if you're giving up a player knowing that there's your deal in place for an extension and it's all said and done. I mean, let's face it. I mean, the Chiefs could be paying a 1-year or first-round pick for a guy to play out his rookie deal, and then you get into a contract standoff and you play under the franchise tag. You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that this could play out. But honestly, I mean, taking it at face value and not necessarily getting the Baltimore side of the story, I heard you talking about it a little bit earlier. I mean, I agree. I mean, this seems to be a situation where a player handled his exit properly. He didn't try to flamethrow his way out of town. He let the team know where he was, what he wanted, what his mindset was. He was dealing with a generally class, first-rate organization that was like, you know what, we can't give you what you want.
Yeah.
And money's not going to take care of it. So, it's not like we can just throw you $20 million a year and you're going to be fine playing right tackle. Wasn't going to happen. And, yeah, I mean, it seems like it was just handled a very good way with an organization saying, you know what, we got a player who's unhappy. We can't make him happy. We want him to be happy because we like this guy, so let's figure out a way to make him happy.
Yeah, I thought that's what I wanted to talk about next. I know that's a big part of your story about him that's up on ChiefsDigest.com right now. You can go check it out, ChiefsDigest.com, where it is the most, maybe the most unique and almost certainly the most polite trade demand and eventual trading and breakup between player and team. And also, again, the team that his dad played for that had so much, there was such a connection there and such a mutual respect across the board that none of it honestly doesn't make sense, for me at least, until you understand exactly where Orlando Brown Jr. is coming from. in that specific conversation about the promise he made to his dad, and that being the thing that that's what he wanted to be sort of fulfilled by. Like you said, it wasn't that he wanted left tackle money and he couldn't get that on the right side. The NFL doesn't really work quite that way anymore. He wanted to play left tackle because that's what his dad told him to do, and it's what he always wanted to do. And I think that is tremendously unique, and this situation served the Chiefs very well, and is honestly a very cool and again, very unique way of a story like this unfolding in my mind. What did you make of all of those sort of little intricacies of it that we learned about more today?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we'll see what happens when we hear the Ravens side of it, and I'd expect that, given that organization, I mean, even if there were any hard feelings or, negative feelings there, I expect that they'll probably take the high road with it. Mm-hmm. But I'm with you. I mean, at face value, I mean, this simply just seems to be exactly that. This was a player who came and gave the team 3 great years. I mean, it wasn't like Orlando Brown was just a stiff out there. I mean, he played really hard for them for 3 years and earned his way to that left tackle spot, even with the injury. I mean, he earned that opportunity, and then he excelled once he got it. And like I said, I mean, he did not shoot his way out of town. I mean, this was not a lot of leaking to the media. There wasn't any negativity. And I think a lot of players underestimate just, the importance of that, of making sure that things don't get personal, because that's the only way that a deal like this happens. I mean, if this had gotten personal, Ravens would be completely in their mindset to say, you know what, hey, we're going to sign Villanueva. We're going to make sure we got ourselves a right tackle. If you don't want to play right tackle, you're not playing. So go ahead and sit out. I mean, it could have gotten that way. And with some organizations, it would have gone that way. But it doesn't. And you know what? I mean, I think a big part of it is that, once again, at face value, Orlando Brown seems like a really character guy that you want on your football team.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how anybody could listen or watch that press conference today and not walk out of it wanting to buy an Orlando Brown jersey.
Yeah. On that note, I'm going to need your expert breakdown on this sound, please.
Yeah, that's super funny, man. Anybody that knows me, man, I've been wearing, my foxtail for a long time. It kind of started back in college with my mentor, actually. It was a famous movie called Breaking. It was like a dance movie that's called Breaking that came out in the 80s. And there was this guy on there named Ozone, and he had a bunch of foxtail on his hat, on his pants, on his shirt. I remember asking him, what is that? And so I looked up on eBay, and I saw it was a foxtail, man. I've been wearing it ever since.
Matt, your thoughts?
He had me at foxtail. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, I mean, Orlando Brown's a nerd, and I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, the glasses, the break-in references. I mean, Orlando Brown is a nerd, and I'm here for it.
Every Orlando Brown jersey has to come with a complimentary foxtail, right? or a wolf tail. KC Wolf connection. It's like gray, or maybe it's red and gold. The coolest possible outcome, I think, for the 2021 Kansas City Chiefs is that foxtails become just a part of the fan dressing up experience. I would love that for all of us.
So everyone in Arrowhead Stadium is either going to be wearing foxtails, or they'll be wearing the headband with the Mahomes hair sticking out of it.
Yeah, and then there's some Zubaz mixed in. I will personally show up to media events with my foxtail, as I always did. I do think it's a little corny of Orlando Brown. It kind of feels like he came to town and took my jersey number without asking, where it's like, well, we could have worked this out. Like, I could have gotten a new affectation. Maybe I could have started carrying a pocket watch or something. But he just sort of took that from me, and I'm going to have to learn to deal with it.
Yeah, we're really talking about bringing Camaro head back to front and center here.
We really are. Last thing I think on the field for right now, obviously the left side of this offensive line now is Orlando Brown Jr. and Joe Thuney, a very highly paid guard and a soon-to-be very highly paid and highly regarded left tackle. The right side has competitions, but I think we all feel pretty good about the competitions that are happening over there. And then Austin Blythe is the biggest question mark, probably, just because it's kind of him or maybe Nick Allegretti, and I expect they'll probably draft someone later on in the draft this year to maybe compete with him or to take over after 2021. But how do you feel about the Chiefs' offensive line at this point, noting where we came from, Week 1 last year, Super Bowl last year. And also, I want to know how big of a, direct and identifiable impact you think it's going to have on the Chiefs this year.
Yeah, I had to go back. I had to calculate it and look it up for the story because I just wanted to kind of once again get it in my mind. 46 days ago that the Chiefs released Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz.
Holy bleep, dude. No, it wasn't.
46 days.
No, that happened in 2012. What are you talking? No way.
46 days.
That was a
It
lifetime.
took Brett Veach to rebuild this offensive line.
Holy smokes.
I mean, that's a lot of work in 46 days.
Yeah.
And hey, there's a ton of reasons to be extremely optimistic about this offensive line, and because you've got two, like you said, you've got two blocks. I mean, Orlando Brown and Joe Thuney, you're not worried about. I mean, that's great. And honestly, I mean, you've got insurances against the questions that you have. I mean, let's face it, LDT, Kyle Long are question marks. I would not be comfortable just saying that either one or both those guys are going to be able to roll out there and be exactly who they were the last time that we saw them on a football field. There's no guarantee. Well, you know what? If neither one of them pan out at right guard, still got Andrew Wiley.
Yeah, that's true.
So if your third worst option is Andrew Wiley, you're in really good shape. I mean, it's a really good football player. Yeah. You're going to have a competition on the right side, and I will not be able to make any argument that Mike Remmers or Lucas Niang are going to be better than Mitchell Schwartz because right now they're not. But you got to feel pretty good that at least you got a competition there that whoever wins that job will be a solid player for you. Austin Blythe looks like probably the center of the future. I mean, Brett Veach has been throwing out some smoke screens about maybe Joe Thuney's the center. I'm not buying that stock yet. But, even if not, I mean, you got Nick Allegretti, who played well for you at guard, who could step in. I mean, this team still has, I think, question marks on the offensive line, but the question marks are a whole lot less scary than they were heading in the Super Bowl 55.
Yep.
And if at worst, you feel like you're going to end up with some pretty good depth, I'm with you. I mean, I would not be surprised if the Chiefs still took an offensive lineman at some point during the draft. Wouldn't be surprised if they mined, priority free agents and maybe some, maybe there's a free agent pool. There's still some bodies out there that they want to bring in for competition. But, I mean, like I said, there's question marks, but I don't think there's any reason not to be optimistic about this group.
Yeah, I think you're right. Where previously you were looking at a total void at left tackle, you're looking at it being in some way, at left or right side, just being a heartbeat away, from or a hamstring away from all of a sudden having some really big issues at those positions. And now things feel like the worst case scenario at a couple spots, it'll be just okay. I think Mike Remmers' worst case scenario is probably going to be an okay right tackle. He was pretty good last year. All right, LDT or Kyle Long, yeah. All right. Maybe they won't match what's on the left side of the line, but it's going to be fine, I think, which is exciting. Let's talk specifically about the draft a little bit, and also they let everybody know that our Chiefs Draft Talk here on Almost Entirely Sports this week is brought to you by Operating Engineers Local 101 Apprentice Program. Learn to operate all types of heavy equipment and specialized construction machinery. Call today at 816-640-2336. I don't know if you feel like you're any good at operating specialized construction machinery or heavy equipment, Matt, but do you feel like you can do that or help me predict what's going to happen in the draft this week?
I can do neither one pretty much, I mean, I would be less likely to hurt people predicting what's going to happen in the draft.
That's true. And if you want to make the pivot, you can call today at 816-640-2336. I wanted to read it again because I'm really bad at flipping numbers by accident, and I did want to do that to the good folks at Operating Engineers Local 101 Apprenticeship Program. So, with that being said, the Chiefs now post-Orlando Brown trade, their biggest need is completely off the board now. I mean, not that they won't draft a lineman, but the tackle position, left tackle position, went from number one with a bullet to being totally set, theoretically, for years and years to come. Now there are 2 second-round picks at 58 and 63, a fourth, couple of fifths, and a sixth-round pick. If you had to bet on position groups for those second-round picks, understanding that a lot is going to happen before the Chiefs are on the clock, where would your bets be right now?
My bets right now would be on edge, it would be on linebacker, and it would be on wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And thin kind of the field. I mean, I can't rule out any position other than I'm pretty sure the Chiefs aren't going to be taking a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, can you tell me they're not going to take a running back in the second round just so I can sleep tonight?
They are not going to take a running back in the second round. I will guarantee that.
Oh, I don't know if you want to play that game, Matt.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say no running back in the second round.
I marked it. We'll see what happens.
You know what, Matt? If they do, Josh will get tased for you.
I won't, but that's okay. Go ahead, Matt. Sorry about that.
I will pin it to my Twitter profile.
Okay.
For the next year.
Wow.
That I predicted they would not take a running back if they do take a running back.
Can we tweak this and say that if let me tweak this. If they do draft a running back in the second round, me, Beards, and Rudy get to pick what your pen tweet is for a year.
Absolutely.
You don't want that.
Okay. All right, I'm rooting. I hope Travis Etienne falls to 63. I'm ready because that might be worth it for me. But anyway, not running back, but edge, receiver, linebacker. Why those three besides perhaps obvious reasons?
I mean, edge is you were talking about it earlier. I mean, it's most glaring need I think that's left on this team.
Yeah.
You've got to be prepared for possibly Frank Clark not being on this team next year.
Yep.
You don't really have that young, reliable edge rusher yet.
Yep.
You're hoping that Mike Dana is something, but you don't have it yet. And yeah, you've got some stopgaps with Jerron Reed, but as you would prefer to be able to have a full-time edge out there, and to allow Chris Jones to spend a little bit more time on the interior, and just be ready for the future. So it's a short-term and a long-term need. Wide receiver is always going to be a need for this team, in the sense that they're going to double down on targets for Patrick Mahomes. But right now, I mean, to me, it continues to be a need because at this point, McCole Hardman hasn't stepped up yet. Demarcus Robinson is, to a degree, a finished product. You know what that is. You're going to be going in, 2 more years. You're going to be having possibly contract negotiations with Tyreek Hill, so you got to be prepared for that. And I just think this team always wants to be able to make sure that they have weapons for Patrick Mahomes. And they could honestly use a really, a big possession, middle of the field kind of receiver to pair with him. So that's a need. At the linebacker, I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I think it's Nick Bolton or bust. I mean, Brett Veach even mentioned, that the linebacker position is pretty thin. Which is usually code for I'm taking a linebacker.
Right.
In this draft. And I would say that's the case if he's taking a linebacker in the 5th round because it is a really thin linebacker group. But Nick Bolton seems to be the guy that this team likes. It would be a good fit, I think. And late in the second is probably more appealing to some than if you were getting him at the end of the first.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. There's no Mizzou bias seeping through there at all. That's just purely just journalist hat.
On my part, there's absolutely 15% Nick Bolton bias on my part.
That's fine.
But at the same time, I mean, I tell you what, I just think that him and Willie Gay would be a really interesting duo because they're a little bit different players.
No.
And I think they would play off of each other.
Counter argument.
Don't do this.
Jamin Davis would be better.
I don't want to talk about it.
No, you can just no.
Yeah.
False.
Rudy is so
you're
desperate.
right. I mean, he's gonna go in the first round.
You have
so,
Matt House. Matt House is basically a Kentucky Wildcat. He's on the team.
We have a defensive guy, and we refuse to like Nate's telling me maybe he'll be one. I'm just like, no, you're gonna break my heart. People are like, well, maybe Kelvin Joseph. Like, they're not gonna draft a corner in the first 2 days. Okay, it's just not happening.
The linebacker is really interesting to me because receivers, obviously, I think you've explained. Edge, you've explained. I have found myself. Here's the thing. Drafting linebackers annoys me a little bit as a positional value thing for the most part, depending on what type of guy you're finding. And I don't know what Nick Bolton does in 2021 necessarily, but I also think that a lot of these draft picks are going to be about 2022 and beyond.
Football.
Like a post Anthony Hitchens step in there. But I do think it's fair to take a closer look at linebackers right now because think about how quickly we've all pretty much given Willie Gay the go-ahead. Like, that dude played 14 snaps last year, and I'm barely exaggerating, I feel like. And pretty much everybody is ready to say that he's going to start week 1. And I don't know that we have evidence for that. We have hope for that, but I don't know that we have evidence for that. And then it's just been Neiman.
Yeah. And frankly, for the future, if you're just talking about strictly 2022, there's no guarantee that Anthony Hitchens is on this team next year.
Yep.
I mean, there's an out contract there.
Yeah.
And Ben Neiman's not under contract. There's really nobody's under contract. So that's why, I mean, to me, and especially the thing is with the linebacker in the NFL today is that, honestly, you don't need 4.
Right.
You really don't even need 3. You need 2.
Yeah.
And you just want those 2 to be really, really good. I mean, it's not like you need a ton of depth because, honestly, I mean, if one guy gets hurt, especially a team like the Chiefs, I mean, if somebody gets banged up, you're just going to play more Dan Sorensen. I mean, you're going to play more safeties on the field.
Right.
And that's the way a lot of NFL, I mean, that's the way, in this league where you've got to cover 4 or 5 passing targets most of the time. It's not the same way. It's not like you're still putting 6'4", 250-pound guys out there all the time. I mean, you need guys who can cover all the time. And you're right. I mean, the question with Willie Gay is that the Chiefs brought him along slowly last year because, they had no offseason program, so they couldn't get into him with teaching him the drops and everything that he needs to do in pass coverage. They really protected him by trying to put him into certain situations where they thought he could succeed. And the reason we're optimistic is that he succeeded in those situations. I mean, it wasn't like he failed. I mean, he met every bar. He's going to have to do more this year. You're right. I mean, we are kind of anointing Willie Gay as it is, but you see the athleticism, you see the success he had last year, and you're projecting that, he's going to be a better player. And that takes me on a side note to this draft because, last year the Chiefs were really big on projections last year. I mean, everybody that they took, for the most part, was if this guy had one more year of college, if he had stayed one more year, if he had been healthy, they jumped all over those guys. I mean, everybody that they took was one of those guys. I'm curious about how they're going to handle this year, especially with players who opted out, players who are leaving, after their junior year with maybe minimal playing time. There's a lot of the players out there that fit into that category. And I'm curious if this is going to be another projection draft or if this is a draft where Brett Veach is like, you know what? Nope. I want guys who have been in college 3 or 4 years that played the entire time, that didn't sit out. We're gonna go for baselines here rather than projecting guys that we think will be good in 2 years, but we want to be good now.
Yeah. I'm curious to see what that crowd. I think that's a really good point about last year's class and then keeping an eye on that for this year, because this is something we talked about earlier also around Orlando Brown. Where, like, you move your first-round pick, and you're also going to pay him a bunch of money, and you're paying Anthony Hitchens and Frank Clark a bunch of money. You might need to find guys. At this point, I'm a little more relaxed, I think, about the immediate and what these players could do for the team in their first year. And I'm thinking about, can you get a rookie contract to replace Anthony Hitchens without having a dip in production? Or could you do the same for Frank Clark? Or could you, it's a reason that Lucas Niang being the right tackle of the future would be so good in terms of evening out the money between him and Orlando Brown. I wonder if there's going to be a gamble on guys that they think could fill that role in the future, or if it's going to be trying to find guys that you're more confident in the floor of, I guess, than the ceiling of, which I think you're right, was sort of the tone of last year's draft was we're gonna find these ceilings, and whenever they get comfortable and they make that transition, they're gonna be great.
And based on our conversation with Brett Veach and also some things that I've heard from evaluators around the league, I mean, this is a really weird draft. I mean, there are a lot fewer players in this draft and going to be in free agents after the draft than in most years. And the general result seems to be that, like Brett Veach mentioned the other day, that there's a sweet spot in probably the second and third round. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you what, and I've noticed this even just going through own mock draft scenarios and looking at things, after round 4, guys start looking a lot the same.
Yeah.
I mean, even from round 4 to priority free agents, I mean, there's just not a really big line between those groups. And, I mean, that's why I think, the last couple of rounds of this draft are going to be a crapshoot. Mm-hmm. You are going to see some post-draft free agents make teams just because there's not enough to evaluate them, or they are these project guys that didn't see a lot of time in their junior year or senior year in 2020, or maybe they regressed a bit. Just because of, the fewer practices and fewer workouts and less experience. There's a lot of factors that are going into this draft. And, to me, I think there's a reason why Brett Veach wanted to make sure that he still had 2 spots there, late second, to be able to make some moves, rather than, having all these picks that he had in 100 plus. Because I think once you get past 100, these guys in this draft, a lot of them look exactly the same.
Yeah. And I even think I think there's something that we talked about a little bit with Verderame earlier, but like the drop from 31 to 58, I'm not sure is going to be tremendous because, Veach even said there were something like 16 or 17 impact day one starters. Is the difference between 31 and 58 going to be huge? And then also what happens once you start getting to those guys you're talking about there who either, guys that would have gone in that range who didn't declare because they got an extra year eligibility, or guys that are playing on going to get drafted on limited tape and everything. It's going to be a super duper interesting draft class, and I'm ready for it to finally almost be here. Matt, thank you as always for joining us. Sorry about all the things that Beard's going to take out of context from you and then use against you in the future.
That's the only reason I show up in this show.
It's the only reason?
Well,
all right.
It's the biggest reason.
I guess I'll stop telling people to go read your website and buy your book that, that I also need to get in line on, I guess. I'll buy your next book.
The second biggest reason is that I love you, Josh. So.
All right. So we'll tell people to go read ChiefsDigest.com. Go click Matt's links. You can go buy Showtime and At Last. Are those both still on TriumphBooks.com? Is Showtime still on there?
There are probably limited quantities of the press runs left.
Limited edition. Go get the last first edition. Hurry up!
Exactly. There you go. It's a collector's opportunity at this point.
Money falling through your fingers, and you can get. And maybe if you buy both of them and you prove it to Matt, maybe he'll send you the anything is possible PDF from this year's non-book. That's a pretty good little bonus offer there. Mm-hmm. Support you on Patreon and get the Chad Henne copy.
I like the way you think, Josh.
I do too. It works out infrequently, but when it does, sometimes it makes money. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Follow him on Twitter @Matt Derrick and support his work over the course of the draft. He'll be putting out stuff, no question, as the Chiefs are making their selections, and always an excellent Twitter follow and asks good questions both in press conference settings and also in kind of just journalistically. So if you want more Chiefs coverage and you're not following Matt for some reason, I don't know how this has happened, but go follow him on Twitter @Matt Derrick. I'll tell you again, because I want to, that all of our draft coverage here this week on Almost Entirely Sports is brought to you by the Operating Engineers Local 101 Apprentice Program. Learn to operate all types of heavy equipment and specialized construction machinery. Call today at 816-640-2336. That's 816-640-2336.
Want more Almost Entirely Sports? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 Facebook page. You're listening to Almost Entirely Sports.
It's like I'm trying to think of a good home repair project to compare the Chiefs to at this point. I don't know. We tried the WD-40. We tried the duct tape.
With Joshua Briscoe.
Have you tried just hitting that doorknob with a fish?
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Is that an old one, Beards?
Yeah.
Boy,
I've played that one before.
That one I'm just so confused as what it may have spurred that on. Thanks again to Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest for joining us. Follow him on Twitter at Matt Derrick. Also, thanks to everybody who's watching the show in any variety of places, including United Baltic Fire, who I think is new on Twitch. Literally Gaming, who we met out of the Sporting Kansas City game. Very nice to by the way, now in a post-COVID world, if you come up to me in a live setting and I remember to restock them, I will be giving out AES on 810 pins again, as Literally Gaming was able to get the Sporting.
And we found out that he once interviewed Beards.
Yes, he's the one who interviewed you for a project a million years ago.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
He brought that up.
He said he got a D
I
and he had some issues with you, but
Yeah.
we said, well, hey.
Yeah, we said we won't bring it up. We won't put him on blast for it or anything, but thanks for being honest. Your teacher said you did great work, but the person you interviewed was a real scrub.
That makes sense.
But I won't tell Beards that you said that. And also, on You're Not on Twitch, said usually listening in a work truck. Nice to check out the stream. Thanks for checking out the stream. If you are watching on the Sports Radio 810 Twitch, YouTube, or Facebook channels, like the Facebook page, subscribe to the YouTube, and follow the Twitch, whichever one that you're on, because then whenever we pop up, you'll get little notifications. You'll just see it, and you can hop in for a little bit, say hi, see who's in the chat. It's been a lot of fun doing this way, especially since the start of the year, since we got the Twitch back in. And also, I'll give one reminder for the streaming watchers and maybe the over-the-air listeners that if you miss any of Almost Entirely Sports and you like the show, you want to get the full experience, you can subscribe to the podcast. Just search for Almost Entirely Sports, wherever you get your podcasts, or you can go to AES.show in your browser, and you'll find all the links to subscribe wherever you want to get your podcasts. So there's all that. I did a mock draft after the Chiefs traded for Orlando Brown that we'll talk about tomorrow. Only 20 minutes left in tonight's show. Flown by when we have huge news to talk about and a couple of great Matts on the phone. I don't know why I said that so aggressively, but I did. But Rudy, we haven't talked very much about how we feel about Orlando Brown. How are you feeling outside of being slightly cold and slightly damp as we were setting up for Sporting on Friday? How are you feeling right now, and also how that move's going to affect them this year, and also what that does for the draft?
I mean, still slightly cold.
Yeah, fair.
But to be fair, that's hey, that's just me. I'm always slightly cold.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm not really, because you interrupt me, and I'm interrupting you back again now, but it's for a great reason.
Yeah, that's fine.
Beards, can I get some breaking news? Ice Pyro on Twitch says, I'm changing oil in a garbage truck while listening right now. Do you guys feel like smaller men just hearing that sentence?
No.
That somebody is changing oil in a garbage truck
Rudy
listening
is
to
quite tall.
this show?
I'm a tall boy.
I feel weak.
Yeah, I'm a tall boy.
He also says, Beard, that just started the Wheel of Time audiobook. Anyway, there's your check-in.
Very good.
There's your check-in on Ice Pyro. I just love.
I'm sorry for your loss, Ice Pyro.
By the way, if you are changing oil in a garbage truck while listening to Almost Entirely Sports, the oil changing experience and the garbage are not even the grossest things in that interaction at that point. Because it's us.
I'm not garbage.
We're garbage.
Yeah, pretty garbage.
Back to you, Rudy.
So I was pretty excited. That's it. That's all I have.
Is that what you got?
No.
Unbelievable. All right, let's play the Foxtail audio again.
No, so yeah,
okay, fine. Let Rudy talk.
Yeah, so at first, it caught me completely off guard because I just assumed that this was something that was never going to happen, because if you're Baltimore, why would you send your best, one of your better assets to the team who you are directly competing against? And the reality was, odds are, I just assumed somebody else would offer a trade at the very least similar to what the Chiefs offered. And if you have that choice, you would just, send it to the team that you're not directly competing against. And also, literally any other team, technically their offer is basically going to be better because they're not drafting as high as the Chiefs. So just most teams, just better offer up there. So I was really surprised. But at first it caught me a little off guard. I was, I think my initial reaction was there was a little bit of we've just moved on from another first round pick. you run into this issue of, okay, like this has to work, because if we keep doing this and it doesn't work, we're going to eventually just kind of run out of assets, run out of room. Yeah, like you said, the margin of error is just much shorter, smaller. The thing that I really liked about this, though, especially compared to the Frank Clark, because again, my first initial thought was Frank Clark, and look how that's worked out. The thing that kind of hurts with the Frank Clark is that not only did you give up draft assets, you also immediately had to sign him to a long-term deal. Now, the hope here is that you will be signing Orlando Brown Jr. to a long-term deal because he will play good, but there is that sense of him showing for a full year that he can play left tackle at a high level. Because if he comes out this year and really struggles at left tackle, which there's no reason to think that he will, he was a good player at it last year. But if he comes out and is bad or sustains an injury, hopefully that doesn't happen. Like there is a little bit of you do not have to commit a crazy amount of money right now, like you did with Frank Clark. I think there's a little bit of a safety valve in there. Again, hopefully you give him a bunch of money. I hope he demands $20 million a year because he's worth $20 million a year. I hope he goes out and plays like Trent Williams this year. That's the hope. But I think there is a little bit of that safety that that you don't normally get with these type of trades. That maybe this is really it is pretty unique to the whole pretty unique to the whole COVID deal, where the salary cap in general is just much lower this year than what we were expecting at any moment, because the salary cap just dropped, right? Like COVID just caused the salary cap to just drop in a way that we didn't expect. And I think that's why, and that's at least in part why Orlando Brown is wanting to wait until next year instead of getting that deal now. There's going to be a much better market for him next year, and ideally, again, market with the Chiefs. So, and then seeing ultimately how they were able to get a second round pick. Like to me, I thought that was the one. Once I saw that, because at first I just saw the Orlando Brown trade news. Once I saw the second round pick, I was like, okay, I'm very happy. I'm very happy with this.
Did you guys see what Chris Paul just did?
I did not.
Beards was looking at his freaking phone.
I was looking at my phone.
The one time when it would be good for content for Beards to be paying attention to the basketball game on his TV. What were you looking at on your phone while Rudy was talking?
Rebecca texted me.
Did you tell her you're working? Did you tell her you're doing a radio show?
She asked if I was done yet, and I said I was almost done.
Beards is never really working.
You couldn't have just done that to her. You couldn't respond to her commercial break.
Boy!
Chris Paul just reached into the heart of the New York Knicks and ripped out of their heart and ate it raw twice. He had back-to-back unbelievable plays.
I just saw it on TweetDeck. Oh boy. Oh boy.
He is very good at basketball.
I'm working on a tweet right now. We've got some people call Chris Paul the point god. It's like point guard.
I mean, point guard.
We know. We got it.
Point guard is Nikola Jokic, but that's fine.
I'm also workshopping CP3zus or CP3zus Christ.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
But I need a Holy Spirit. Or I need a Holy Ghost version. I need point God CP3zus Christ. And I don't know what else. It's tough.
Yeah, I don't really got one there.
Okay. Rudy tried for a second and then bowed out very quickly, and Beards is on Reddit.
I just don't know if I just don't got one. Ghost. Holy.
That's fine.
Holy.
I'm gonna let it go.
Post miss.
God, Twitter. How's Twitter still bad right now?
Twitter's always
Twitter
bad.
needs to relax.
Twitter is always bad. I see the thread too. Oh boy.
We're not even talking. Who knows what we're talking about? We could be talking about anything.
I know. I'm just saying. I see the thread.
We could be talking about anything.
It could be a thread of any people.
Could be anybody.
I just saw a different tweet.
Oh no!
By at Bill James Online.
Yeah. Oh,
Rex
what?
Hudler's the Jar Jar Binks of Major League Baseball. Just the disrespect.
The secret evil overlord in charge of everything?
Disrespect.
Don't tell me to break, Beards. I know what time it is. I know you got. Listen,
Beards knows what time it is because he's looking at his phone.
Yeah, he's trying to get out of here. Apparently, Beards has a hard out at 9:01 tonight.
Beards is not waiting around.
We might just go till 10, Beards. Why don't you tell Rebecca that, huh?
Well, that's okay. Rudy can come in and run the show then.
No, we need all of it. It's a team effort, baby.
Well, also, the system's set to go.
I mean, I
Final
can
at 9.
I
You probably
can
change
change that in 2 seconds.
You can. You'll just be the one then running it because I
that's
won't
your
be here.
job. That's your job, Beards.
It's so important for you, Beards.
I mean, Beards, we can make you go on another vacation real fast if you don't want to do
Oh,
your
don't worry.
job.
I've got one booked. Two, in fact.
What?
Beards
I
is
won't be
taking
here
off.
next week.
Yeah.
For a couple days.
For like, Beards needs a week to move. I'm taking a day.
I'm also getting my first shot, so you know.
You're not gonna
I
have
was
side effects
supposed
your
to-
first shot. It's fine.
I was supposed to get my shots, and then I was shot by a metal spike. Hopefully, I'll get that next week. As long as another. Oh, here we go. Literally gaming Holy Spirit, but with a 3 instead of the E.
Well,
That's-
it's not an E though.
Well,
It's an I.
that's true.
Yeah, it's supposed to be an I.
It's still pretty good though. That's not bad. It's better than anything I've got. I'm not out here just gonna.
No, it is better than
I'm
anything
not
you've
gonna,
got. But
I misspelled
you said
spirit
a
in my
3
head.
instead
Yeah,
of an E.
I
when
know
it's
what I said.
Very much not an E.
I know what I said.
You got a dinner reservation, Beards? What do you gotta do that's so important?
Well, it's just nice to get off at 9 tonight.
Worked
tell
so
us.
hard today, didn't you, Beards?
I mean, I'm at this point now. I know. I just wish someone would tell me if it was time to take a break or not. Oh, Beards, hey, turn on my microphone. Blast the microphone, Beards. No, Beards, I need you to blast my microphone.
Every time you do that, I'm going to turn it down.
No, you don't get to take it. What are you talking about? I don't like this little pedantic little monster that you become. Whenever I just simply ask to do a bit, and I just want to do a bit on behalf of the radio show.
It's fine, but just don't lick your lips.
Troy, I can't. I just have to. Listen, man, you sneeze halfway through half of your sentences. Sometimes I make noises with my mouth. I can't help it. Troy on Twitter says, pick and rolly spirit. That's pretty good. So we have, Beards, back up, please. So we have point God, CP3's us, and the pick and rolly spirit. That's pretty good. Beards, what do you have to do after the show tonight? Beards.
Eat.
What else? I mean, I don't know what else I expected.
At JB Briscoe, at Beards McFly, at Not That Rudy, at Sports Radio 810. Just do it already. This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Briscoe.
I think today was not only a weird show, it was also at least okay.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Just a little bit of showtime left. I gotta say, it does. I feel maybe this is not having a show for a few days and having a ton to talk about, and also getting done at 9. But I feel like, Beards, if you want to go another hour, man, we can go another hour. I got a little more juice in the tank than I thought I was going to today. You go another hour, Beards?
No, thanks. I'm good.
What are you gonna eat whenever you get off work?
Probably make a sandwich.
Right. Just as soon as possible. You swing by somewhere?
No.
Just gonna go home?
Yeah.
Okay. Rudy, what are you gonna do whenever Beards sprints out of the door and leaves a freaking beard-shaped hole in the drywall as he escapes here because he's in such a big old hurry?
I'm looking forward to eating something because I haven't had a chance to eat today because I've been working all day.
Hey, Beards, before I see right now that you're halfway through the door, but make sure you hit the button that ends the show before you leave.
No promises.
Could you just also make sure you upload it back? I know you got places to be.
Well, I mean, listen, man, we'll see.
He's on his way out of the door right now. He's in the hallway. Beards, you got to come. Please let me know how much time is left.
You got 30 seconds.
All right, I could probably figure it out from there. I'd love another ear check there at 10. Well, I thank Matt Verderame and Matt Derrick for joining us. Oh, Beards is gone.
10.
Oh, he's left a beard-shaped hole in the foam in the wall.
What's that look like?
Chicken? It's just chicken strips everywhere. Thanks to Matt and Matt. Go support their work at Fansided and Chiefs Digest and everything that they do. Also, subscribe to the podcast if you haven't yet. We'll talk to you again tomorrow night. Until then, bye, Mom.
You are listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Briscoe on Sports Radio 810 WHB.